Good evening, everybody. My name is Kate O'Connor, and I am chair of the panel, and I'm a citizen member. And I want to call the January 26, 2017 meeting to order. We have some new members of the Governor Scott's administration joining us here tonight, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves when we go along. But if they want to say, a couple of fun things about what you did before you became a member of the current administration and the job that you have, we would love that. And I want to ask everyone on the panel as well, we have the members of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the staffers on the phone. So when we go down the line, I'm going to use this occasion for us to introduce ourselves to them. So when you speak into the mic, speak so that they can hopefully, with clarity, so hopefully they can hear us on the phone. So I guess we'll start. Senator McDonald, would you like to start the introduction? And please use the mic.
Mark McDonald, I represent Orange County, and I represent the Senate here on this panel.
Steve Skibniowski, representing the town of Vernon, appointed by the Vernon Board of Select Persons.
Derek Jordan, I'm a citizen member.
Bill Irwin, I work for the Department of Health, and I represent the Agency of Human Services Secretary.
Chip Manto, citizen member. I live in Westminster.
Chris Campen, Executive Director, Wyndham Regional Commission.
David Andrews, IBEW Local 300, representing the present and former workers of Vermont Yankee.
Martin Langeveld, I'm a citizen member and I live in Vernon.
I'm Katie Buckley. I'm the new commissioner for the Department of Housing and Community Development, representing the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. It's a mouthful. I'm a resident of Guilford, and before coming to this position, I worked for the town of Guilford. I worked for Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust and Vermont Academy.
June Tierney, I am the new commissioner of the Vermont Department of Public Service. Before I took this position, I was an attorney with the Public Service Board, serving as their general counsel, and was active on a few Yankee cases there. Before that, I was a hearing officer and had some Yankee work as well. And before that, I had several years at the Vermont Department of Public Service as a staff attorney where I worked on Yankee cases, and I'm delighted to be here.
And I'm Peter Walk, the new Deputy Secretary of the Agency of Natural Resources. And before coming back home to Vermont, I would work for the state of New York doing environmental policy work. And before that, I was in the Navy for 9 years.
Good evening, I'm Jack Boyle. I am the Decommissioning Director at Vermont Yankee.
Good evening, my name is Mike McKinney. I'm the Technical Coordinator for Decommissioning.
And I'm Jim Tonkovich, a citizen member from Windsor County.
Great, and thank you. And I do really want to welcome the new people who are joining us at the table. And we hope that you will come back after this first meeting. I want to do a quick overview of the... Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Representative Dean.
Yeah, David Dean, State Representative, citizen member, and River Steward for the River Watershed Council.
Anybody else from the panel on the phone?
Not that I can see from here.
Okay, great. So I'll do a quick overview of the agenda, and then we've got the representatives from the NRC who are on the phone. They're going to give us an overview of the license transfer application process that is now getting underway. There will be time for the panel to ask some questions of them. And then we'll do the decommissioning updates from Entergy in the state of Vermont. Then we'll go into, I think Joe Lynch is going to talk about the certificate of public good proposal that's been filed with the Public Service Board. Then we're going to hear from the state a little bit about the process. And then I've added, if it's okay with everyone, and if anybody objects, let me know, Kyle Landis-Marinello from the Attorney General's Office is just going to give us a quick update on what the Attorney General's Office is doing, and hopefully this will just be a preview of another upcoming, maybe more in-depth presentation by the AG's office. Then we have a lot of housekeeping things to do. So what I'd like to do right now is we'll get right into the NRC part, and I put on in front of everybody's table a list of the NRC representatives that are on the phone, but I will ask them to introduce themselves as well. And when we get into the question phase, what we need to do is introduce ourselves every time that we speak so they at least know who they are speaking with. So I don't know if it's going to be Jack that's going to start.
Yes, I can start. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Okay, this is Jack Parrott. I'm the licensing project manager for the Vermont Yankee site for NRC.
Michael Leshinskie, I'm the economist in the Office of Nuclear Reactor Regulation.
Hi, this is
Watson from the decommissioning.
And hi, this is Doug Tift. I'm the State Liaison Officer for NRC Region 1.
Yes, that's everybody from NRC. Okay, this is Jack Parrott again. I'll go ahead and start the presentation. So this is an overview of the review process, decommissioning reactor license, for decommissioning reactor license transfer request. And before I go through this description, I want to emphasize again that NRC has not yet received the application for the transfer of the license for Vermont Yankee. If you turn to page 2. So reactor decommissioning license transfer, the license transfers are common in the NRC for power reactors. For example, the license for Vermont Yankee was transferred previously from the Vermont Yankee Nuclear Power Corporation to Entergy in 2002. Transfers of decommissioning reactor licenses are unique, though, because the plant is shut down, the new licensee is not a power utility or company that typically operates power reactors. Transfers of decommissioning reactor licenses have occurred twice before, the Zion plant in 2009 and La Crosse here recently in 2016. I also want to briefly touch on what decommissioning means in NRC space. That means to remove a facility or site safely from service and reduce residual radioactivity to a level that permits release of the property. And this is remediation to NRC standards, pre-established NRC standards. It does not include demolition of uncontaminated or decontaminated buildings or structures, and it does not include returning the site to a greenfield condition. Okay, page 3. So our review process will begin once we get the application in. We'll do an acceptance review just to make sure that the application structurally has all the elements in it that we need to review on a high-level scale. And once we've determined that it does have that information, we will begin our review and publish a notice of consideration in the Federal Register. And this will include an opportunity for hearing and an opportunity for public comment. Now, the opportunity for hearing could also be called an opportunity for intervention. It's the adjudicatory process. Is open to any person whose interest may be affected by NRC actions on the application. The opportunity remains open for 20 days after the notice of consideration. And then the opportunity for public comment is a 30-day period where written comments can be submitted for consideration by the staff during the review process. So then we will begin our technical review. I'm going to go into the details of that on the next page, but part of what our technical review, what might be included in that is if we find areas where we need additional information, we may be going back to the applicant to request that information formally, and then there'll be an exchange of letters probably. In our regulations, on decommissioning regulations, when a plant first shuts down, the licensee sends in what's called a post-shutdown decommissioning activity report. And under our regulations, we're required to do a public meeting to get comment on that initial submittal, and we did that up at Vermont Yankee. So what it's not in our, it doesn't appear to be in our regulations, although we're reviewing this with our Office of the General Counsel, that there would be another public meeting if they made a change like this. There's also no environmental review required under NEPA for license transfer. These are specifically excluded from such reviews under our regulations. But there will be a consultation with the state on any SER written for the license transfer. Typically, for a major licensing action like this, we schedule a year for them to be completed. In the Zion case, it took about a year and 3 months to be completed. And I should note that the applicant, Entergy and NorthStar, the applicant, have tried to schedule this to be completed by the end of 2017, which would be less than a year. Moving to page 4. Okay, in our technical review, we'll look at the technical qualifications of the applicant. The plant is permanently shut down, so operations criteria are not applicable. Qualifications we look at, we focus on maintenance, maintenance and decommissioning activities of the facility, like removing and disposing of large components, decontamination of the remaining structures, transporting radiologically contaminated waste to an appropriate disposal facility, things like that. So we'll also do a regulatory evaluation to see what NRC regulations and guidance or other standards apply. And again, under the technical evaluation, we'll look for the technical expertise of the applicant, like in areas like radiation protection, transportation, radioactive waste management, security, emergency planning, and radiological decommissioning. We'll also look at the management and organizational, we'll do a management and organizational review. We do this review to ensure that the management and technical support organization and the on-site organization management is involved in, informed of, and dedicated to safe operation of the plant. We'll determine if sufficient qualified technical resources will be provided for safe operation. And then probably the primary part of our review is the financial qualifications, and I'll turn it over to Mike Leshinskie to explain this part.
All right, thank you. Basically, if you go to page 5, the idea here is that the financial assurance continues until the license is terminated. That began from the day that the license was first issued many, many years ago. Recognizing that there will be a new licensee, and again, as Jack pointed out, we do not have an application yet in front of us, but they will be subjected to the financial assurance status reports annually. We basically are looking to see how much money they have spent on decommissioning, again, to NRC's requirements, and to maintain that there is sufficient funding until the time the license will be terminated. The report is reviewed financially for reasonableness, because so far we have never had a problem with anybody's finances, but to make sure that on an annual basis we do not run into problems, so that we have every reason to believe that the licensee will have sufficient funding to terminate the license. I'm sure there will be questions about this later, so I'll turn it back to Jack.
Okay. If you go to slide 6, I just one last thing I wanted to point out, we continue our oversight both of the financial assurance and safety and security before, during, and after a license transfer. So our decommissioning inspection program will continue until the license is terminated. It's done under our inspection manual, Chapter 2561 on decommissioning power reactors. We have a core and discretionary inspection procedure. Implementation is implemented according to the type and level of decommissioning activity that's occurring at the time. We inspect the core procedures annually, and inspection reports are publicly available. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. And I just want to remind people on the panel that they don't have the filing yet, so they can't answer any specific questions about the filing. Bill.
Yes, this is Bill Irwin with the Agency of Human Services, Department of Health. I thank you for this presentation. I have two specific questions. The first is for Mr. Parrott, and you stated that you don't have any regulations that require a public meeting for revisions of the public post-shutdown decommissioning activities report. Can you describe what kind of steps are typical when the PSDAR is revised, i.e. is it provided in writing? Is there some sort of period of time that you will review it, or is it simply considered acceptable and you'll have some sort of comments and requests for additional information? And then the second question is for Mr. Leshinskie. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, Michael. And that is relative to the character of financial assurance reports that you have seen at the two sites, Zion and La Crosse, where they transferred the license ownership, and how that might compare to what we have with Entergy and NorthStar, where a lot of us have concerns about the original site-specific cost estimate being $1.25 billion and the Nuclear Decommissioning Trust Fund being at less than $600 million.
Okay, this is Geoff Eric. I'll take the PSDAR question first. What I'm going off of is what's in the regulations, and what I believe is typical, although I'm not sure I've been involved with that many, but I think once the subsequent PSDAR is submitted, the only requirement is that it be submitted to the NRC and I think the state. There isn't, I don't think there's any typical review of it or request additional information. It's simply more for our information.
Okay, this is Mike Leshinskie. In order to answer the question, it's kind of difficult to answer these things when you're not really sure which way we're trying to compare what to what. But let me just give you an understanding of what the NRC is trying to do. There's a big difference between nominal dollars and purchasing power. And as I recall, with Vermont Yankee, the current PSDAR, they are going into safe stores. Now, during that time, money does have an opportunity to gain interest. It's called the Fisher principle for those of you who are economists. And basically, we make the assumption that whatever the cost may be, the funds will actually grow at a 2% real rate of return, which means that it's 2% greater than inflation, whatever the inflation may be into the future. When we do our analysis on this, we basically are assuming a very conservative approach towards how much money will be available. Therefore, we would prefer in forecasting that the revenue be as conservative as possible, and in this case, it would be the Decommissioning Trust Fund, and that the licensee overestimate their expenses, usually by including a very large contingency factor, anywhere from 20 to 25%. Under those circumstances, so long as the final number, which is more or less an abstract number, is greater than zero at the time that we expect the license to be terminated, they are considered to be providing reasonable assurance for financing. Now, the difference between nominal dollars and purchasing power is simply the fact that as we move forward in time, we recognize that it may take more and more dollars to pay for whatever expenses may be incurred. Second to this is that as long as the licensee chooses SafeStore, they must have identified what would be a secondary source if something should happen that the decommissioning trust fund is insufficient. And again, in this particular case with NorthStar, we have no particulars. I don't know what they're proposing to do and what they will use as a secondary source. Given all of these factors, we review this every year until the license is terminated. And generally speaking, we have not found any problems with the Zion or lacrosse. Lacrosse, we also have not really allowed this transfer back in June, so the next time that we will be looking at their numbers will be on March 31st of this year.
Thank you very much. Great answers.
This is Kate O'Connor, and you don't have to answer. I'm just going to get on my soapbox for like 30 seconds. I feel very strongly that there needs to be a public meeting, especially with the PSDAR, because it's not just a little change. It's the plan is totally changing. And I know, if I'm reading the NRC website correctly, that when the Zion license transferred between Exelon and Entergy Solutions, there was a public hearing in Illinois. So I'm just saying that. You don't have to answer, because I know you don't have an answer now, but I just have to say that because I think it's really important. The PSDAR is not just having a couple words changed, it's the entire plan is changed. So I'm just saying that. No response necessary. So that's me. I'm going to pass it back to Bill Irwin for a second.
They don't have to answer, but I would like to. I 100% agree with you, and I believe that it may be useful for this panel to vote on a motion relative to that, to ensure that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission understands, and that a letter from this panel to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission would be, and copying our congressional delegation and other relevant parties would be important in that process.
This is Chris Campany, Wyndham Regional Commission. Among those other interested parties, I would actually suggest we consider sending, if we pass resolution, send that to other nuclear host communities around the country, since seeing as how this is going to be precedent, probably.
This is Geoff from NRC. One thing we did do a public meeting for the Zion license transfer, but I just want to be clear that was a public meeting and not a hearing. In NRC space, hearing means something else. That's a adjudicatory process. So that was a public meeting we did for Zion.
Hey, Jack, this is Kate O'Connor again. Can you explain when people can request for a hearing? I don't know if you called it a technical hearing. What is that, and what does that mean, and what form that would take, and where would it be?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to be speaking a little bit out of my league here. But the hearing, what I'm talking about is the adjudicatory process where you would intervene, you would gain standing and intervene with some kind of contention. So that it comes before our hearing board at NRC. It's a much more legal process.
Okay, great. I think it's just it helps us to understand what the difference is between a hearing and a public meeting. So thank you so much. Okay, does anyone else on the panel have any questions? Oh, we have one more.
So maybe it's the new year. I'm not sure what's invigorated me, but this topic certainly does. I believe that I'd like to ask the question. There have been announcements of numerous additional, including Entergy, nuclear power plant closures in the coming years, and the landscape seems to be changing to some degree, as in there are a number of plants going into decommissioning, and this would be the third license transfer for decommissioning purposes, and it gives the indication that a new industry, specifically the decommissioning of nuclear power plants for profit, may be arising. Is there some guidance likely from the NRC to be created such that it gives this new landscape some boundaries, so that perhaps some of the lessons that are being learned in these first 3 license transfers and any subsequent ones are captured, and the best practices, as the NRC likes to do, are shared and learned and gained throughout all of the licensees?
This is Geoff Parrott. I don't know of any work that we're contemplating on guidance. This is still a new area for us, but yeah, the possibility is this could be kind of the new industry, so something we should think about.
Well, thank you so much. We very much appreciate your willingness to call in and share that information with us, and I know we'll probably have some more questions in the future, but we have one more.
One more, save a quick question. Jack or Mike or some, will this topic be, will this potential emergence of a new industry, will that be at all discussed at the upcoming Regulatory Information Conference?
This is Mike Leshinskie. I'm not exactly sure what will be discussed at coming up in March. The one thing I'd like to just make sure everyone understands, from a technical point of view, we have enough guidance to make sure that whoever it is, the licensee, they must comply with those regulations. As far as the financial aspects of this, I keep reminding everyone that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission does not regulate commerce. We regulate safety, and that safety takes money. This is the primary reason why we have financial qualifications dealing with this. But whether or not the business end of the licensees, that's their business. So long as they conduct themselves in a safe, secure manner of decommissioning, the technical aspects have already been defined by many, many pieces of guidance, and I don't contemplate any particular guidance on the financial side.
All right, well, thank you so much again. We appreciate you taking the time. It was helpful. And I'm assuming if we have any other questions, we can get back in touch with you.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. You can stay and listen in for the next 2.5 hours if you'd like.
I'll watch the video.
Okay, yeah, watch the rerun. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, next up, I think we have Joe Lynch from Entergy is going to give us an update on the decommissioning activities that have happened, I guess, since December 1st, the last time we had a meeting.
Thank you, Kate, and good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Lynch, Senior Government Affairs Manager for Entergy Vermont Yankee. As Kate mentioned, I'll give you an update on really what's been happening for the last couple of months, and in many respects, give you kind of a year in review of some of the key things that we've been working on the project. As I've mentioned in the past, a lot of our efforts for the past year plus have been focused on really kind of getting out of the areas of the plant that are no longer required because they were normally there to support plant operations. Now that we're shut down, we've abandoned a number of the buildings, certainly all of the operating systems, and really the driver for that is to, one, reduce the energy consumption in those areas, and if those areas aren't needed for part of plant operations, we can also remove the people, which improves our safety. So we've continued that effort all the way through 2016, and now one of the things that we're focusing on as we enter into 2017 is other opportunities. So one of the buildings that we're looking at is, it was an office building called the Construction Office Building. This building is something we're looking very seriously about taking down. It provides an opportunity to eliminate a fire protection system that requires us to heat the building. It's not occupied. And so it accomplishes a number of things. So that'll be one of the near-term focus in the first part of 2017 once the weather improves a bit. As always, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission continues to oversee and inspect the activities at Entergy Vermont Yankee. Just recently, on the 23rd, earlier this week, the NRC did their exit meeting, which was a phone call that highlighted their inspection activities for the fourth quarter of 2016. There were no findings, violations, or significant observations as part of that inspection scope. They use a number of what is known as inspection procedures. On my slide, I listed the 2 inspection procedures. So these are essentially the guidelines that the NRC uses when they come in and perform the inspections at the site. In this particular case, they focused on 2 major work activities. One was the demolition and disposal of the North Warehouse, which is the location for the second dry fuel storage pad. Along with the demolition of the North Warehouse, there was lots of work required to do surveys of that area before we took the building down, to characterize the building for disposal. All of those activities, including reviewing documentation, were part of the work that the NRC did in the fourth quarter. And then second, we've been reporting just about a year now about the various progress we've made with intrusion water. So part of their inspection scope in the fourth quarter was to look at our water management program. Are we properly shipping the water? Are we properly storing the water? So that was part of that inspection scope as well. So again, no findings or violations in the fourth quarter based on our NRC inspections. Next, I'd like to bring you up to date on our dry fuel storage project. As reported at the earlier meetings, one of the major things that we started was the construction of the second ISPAC pad. That again required us to remove the North Warehouse, which is the location for the second pad adjacent to the existing pad. We were able to take that building down on schedule and on budget. We then took all of the waste generated from the building. That was all shipped off site and completed back in December. We are in a period right now, per our schedule, where we're not doing any outdoor activities associated with the construction, just simply due to the winter weather. But again, that was part of our plan. And right now, we are scheduled to re-mobilize the resources to start the next phase, which is to get ready for building the second pad on or about March of this year, so just in a couple months from now. In preparation for the accelerated loading campaign that we talked about at the last meeting, we now have 12 dry gas storage systems that have been delivered on site. These are in addition to the 13 canisters that we have completely filled and stored on the pad. We have 8 additional canister systems scheduled to be shipped to us from Holtec. In March, we'll get the multi-purpose canisters. That's the internal canisters will be shipped, and then in the May timeframe, we'll get the high storms or the concrete overpacks. So that'll give us 20, and then we'll have yet another shipment. And this is all leading up to starting our 2017 loading campaign, which will begin in the springtime. Our plan for this year, our target for this year, is to load about 27 dry gas. Then once we complete the second pad, we will complete the additional 18, sort of the total of the 58 that we'll have stored on site. Right now, the schedule is to have all of that done by the third quarter of 2018. Now, there are some other actions required, including some licensing actions that Holtec has with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission on what is known as the Certificate of Compliance, which is essentially the license for that gas system. Those submittals are in with the NRC. We'll need those approvals to allow us to complete with the schedule that we now have. One other thing to mention is at the last meeting, there was a number of questions asked of Entergy and NorthStar regarding the accelerated dry fuel storage campaigns. We put together a one-page fact sheet, which was, I think, left with all the panel members, and what we tried to do was capture some of the questions that either Scott State from NorthStar or Mike Toomey from Entergy were unable to answer. So that's in your package, so please take a look at that, and if you have any additional questions, we'd be more than happy to either get you the answers or possibly I can address those tonight. A couple photographs try to give people a visual of what's going on. The top photo shows the installation of our new security diesel generator. I talked over the last several months and at the end of 2016 that we replaced or upgraded our security diesel generator with a brand new diesel generator. So that shows the new unit installed. Around it is a barrier system that actually protects the diesel generator from things like external blasts. If someone was to try to come in and do damage to that, we've got this blast wall system that was designed as part of it, so that's all now installed and operational. And then the lower photograph shows the existing ISFC pad, which has both the 13 loaded canisters, and as I mentioned, we now have 12 unloaded canisters and overpack ready for when we start the 2017 fuel storage campaign. Talk a little bit about water management. As you all know, we've been working hard to get control and to make changes to our turbine building where we have water coming in through the pressure that's on the building. The building is about 30 feet below grade, and groundwater in around that area is around 15 to 18 feet, so the building's under a constant pressure from the groundwater. The intrusion water kind of retention, shipment, and removal plan continues to move forward. We continue to store water in one frac tank that's been winterized as that water comes in. And then it's made available for shipments down to Energy Solutions. And in addition to the repairs that we completed at the end of 2016, which is what is known as a seismic gap. This is the gap between the turbine and reactor building where we found a degraded seal. We were able to seal that and saw a reduction in the amount of groundwater intrusion rate. During that work, it was noted there were some other areas that had small cracks that we felt was important that we kept in front of us, so we're in the preparatory actions right now to get that contractor back to seal that up to further improve our intrusion rates going forward. As the year goes on, you know, these flow rates kind of go with the times of year, so, you know, we get the spring melts and things like that. You know, we had seen intrusion rates of upward of 3,000 gallons per day, was reported last spring. Right now, we're about 900 to 1,000, a little higher than we last reported, but we believe those are indicative of the seasonal fluctuations. And we looked a year ago, and indeed, we were seeing 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 gallons a day. So the reduction is still there. It's just increased a bit with the seasonal changes. Right now, we're shipping about 2 tankers a week. That's 5,000 per tanker, about 10,000 gallons per week. To keep up with the intrusion rate, and also in preparation for what I mentioned about some additional repairs. To date, we've shipped 421,000 gallons of water off-site. Talk about the Nuclear Decommissioning Trust Fund. So this will be kind of a year in review. Back in January of 2016, the trust was, the balance was $595.4 million. The latest numbers, which are through the end of 2016, December 31st, was $561.6 million. And the decrease was due to qualified reimbursements from the trust, expenses associated with the trust, including the taxes that have to be paid, and any influence from the market, which was fortunately positive. So if you look at the numbers, we had $66.9 million in qualified withdrawals. We had $37.7 million in market gains, and we had about $4.6 million in fund expenses. I also want to report that we are ahead of budget and ahead of schedule, so we're not spending money faster than we had in our original estimate. In fact, we're beating that for 2 years in a row, which is obviously very good for the project. The other trust fund balance that we have been reporting on is what is known as our site restoration trust balance. That's now at $22.4 million as of December 31st. Entergy has funded 20 of $25 million that was part of the settlement agreement with the state. And so we've got the $20 million contributed by Entergy and about $2.4 million in fund growth. So that stands right now at 22.4. And we have one additional $5 million contribution, which is scheduled for the end of 2017. That will complete our obligations. And then, of course, we try to give you an update on where we are out in the community with communications transparency. Of course, we continue to support the NDCAP. It was mentioned by the NRC in their discussions that there was an NRC public meeting earlier this week on the license transfer application process. That was a voluntary meeting, something that we thought was necessary as a pre-submittal. So we went to the NRC, made a presentation. They were allowed to ask questions, as was the public. We are looking seriously into a second season of Safe Store Matters. That is the local cable TV show that we did a number of episodes in 2016 and 2015. We think it's necessary to get some additional information out, so you might be seeing that on BCTV. We continue to get out in the community, through engagements, and as much as possible with the smaller staff, we continue to be strong members of our community and try to participate in charitable giving where we can. And then, of course, we also do tours as necessary at the site. And then the last thing I'll mention, we talk a lot about our website, but there's a lot of information on the website. It was getting a little bit unwieldy to kind of make sure that information was easily accessible to people. So we are updating the website as we speak. We're going to have a search function, a few other things that will make it easier to find information, but that is literally updated daily. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tony.
Thank you, Joe. Now we're going to have Tony Leshinskie, the state nuclear engineer, give us an update, and then we'll have questions for both Joe and Tony.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I hope this here? Yep. Okay, great. Okay. It's quiet over in this corner. Okay, so just to show where the state is at right now. I do need to do this from here because I'm also controlling the remote access broadcast, so I do apologize for not being at the for not being at the podium. I'm doing all the driving now too. Okay, the major activity for the state right now, in early December, Entergy and NorthStar did file the initial round of pre-filed testimony for the Certificate of Public Good proceeding regarding the license transfer to NorthStar Holdings. As a result of that, several state agencies have begun to review the pre-file testimony. So we have people from Public Service Department, Agency of Natural Resources, Department of Health, and the Attorney General's Office is reviewing that testimony as we speak. We are beginning to develop our first round of discovery questions, namely what questions do we have on the testimony provided so far. You'll note on the slide I make mention of the Public Service Board docket numbers. So much of this information we'll be getting onto the Public Service Board website. So if people wish to review the testimony, they can. And I intend to have a link on the Public Service Department NDCAP website to this particular PSB proceeding as well. There is a pre-hearing conference scheduled for February 1st. That's this coming Wednesday. And from that, we should have a better idea of what the schedule will be for the remainder of the CPG proceeding. So to discuss other activities, as Joe has already noted, most of the construction activities are on hold on site. Nonetheless, state agencies are still involved, keeping an eye on what's going on. I remain on site most of the time, and if I see something unusual, I ask questions. I do know earlier today, Bill Irwin did a teleconference with several people from Entergy just to get an update on water management. And besides that, I know ANR and Department of Health does intend to tour the facility again in the near future to see the current status of hazmat storage. And as noted, our briefings regarding groundwater management at the Vermont Yankee site are continuing on a regular basis. We do get a weekly written brief. We've had a little bit of interruption with that due to the holidays and a number of personal schedules, but those are coming back on track. At the end, mid-December, we agreed, both sides agreed that it made sense at this point to do a monthly teleconference. There was a point when this issue first came to light and there was first a concern that we were actually doing weekly teleconferences. We've agreed to do monthly now with the caveat, number one, the weekly updates, the brief updates, the written updates will continue. And number two, if either side saw a need to speak more frequently, that we would pursue that as necessary. And here we go with that again. Okay, one additional activity. Activities regarding the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. If you recall, early last year, Vermont Yankee made a request to dispose of up to 200,000 gallons of contaminated water to a U.S. Ecology hazmat disposal facility rather than a radiological disposal facility. So this was a request sent to the NRC. The NRC has spent much of this past year reviewing this. There were some news articles about this over the course of the year. The last step of the NRC review was to consult with both the state from where the shipment is coming from and the state where the shipment is being received. So there was an opportunity for both the state of Vermont and the state of Idaho to ask questions regarding the NRC review and the license submittal itself. So that comment period opened in December. It was a 30-day period. Our deadline was January 11th. So we did in fact file some questions with the NRC. Most of these pertain to follow-up on individual samplings of shipments before they head out to Idaho. There was also an additional question provided from Agency of Natural Resources regarding whether there was any characterization of the shipments for potential mixed waste concerns. So those questions are with the NRC. I know they've received the questions. We have not received any comment back, but we are awaiting those. Joe also mentioned the fourth quarter 2016 NRC inspection and exit meeting was held this past week. This is something that I participate in, so I just made a note of that here. Also, the NRC will have an on-site inspector at Vermont Yankee in the near future, and typically when there is an on-site inspection, I make it a point of meeting with the inspector, so that will be coming up. Also noted earlier this week, Entergy and NorthStar did have a pre-submittal meeting with the NRC to explain their intent with the license transfer request. A number of state agency officials, including myself, monitored that meeting remotely. We had hoped to have a person there at the meeting, but because of the weather on Tuesday, Kyle's flight was canceled, so he was not down there. The presentations that were made at Tuesday's meeting are currently available at the Public Service Department NDCAP website. We do hope to keep those there. We've also been notified that the NRC will be releasing a meeting summary for this meeting. It's basically their idea of meeting minutes, and when that happens, we will make a point to have that available on the NDCAP website as well. One additional follow-up with the NRC, you will recall that there is an NRC decommissioning rulemaking process ongoing. Last year, in early March, Vermont led an effort for a multi-state filing in response to the NRC's questionnaire regarding what should be included in decommissioning rulemaking. We filed a fairly large set of comments in March 2016. According to the NRC's original schedule, the next step of that, namely a release of a draft bases document, was to have occurred in fall of 2016. That has been delayed a little bit. The NRC is now indicating that the draft bases document will be out in February 2017. Bruce Watson, before he departed for the evening, I did ask him a quick question about that. Namely, could we get a more specific date than just February 2017? And he indicated that right now, the whole draft bases document is with the Office of General Counsel for legal review. So he indicates that they're a little bit behind schedule, but they still intend that it will be out soon. One other thing that I don't know about the schedule right now, the subsequent step, the release of the final bases document, was originally scheduled for fall of 2017. We really don't know if there will be any impact on the subsequent schedule. NRC has promised that once the draft bases document is out, there will be at least a 45-day public comment period on this. What I'm hearing about how large this document is getting, I'm hoping they will extend that to maybe 90 days. But we have to see the document first before we start complaining about that. And just a reminder, the NRC does have a myriad of public meetings. Most of them do not have anything to do with Vermont Yankee. However, there are a number of Vermont Yankee related meetings almost always on the NRC schedule. So the NRC does maintain a public meeting website. This includes a schedule. It also provides teleconference information. Just about every meeting has some type of teleconference access. Some meetings also have a webcast, and so all of this information is available on the NRC's public meeting portal. One person from the NRC here tonight, and I don't have the message in front of me anymore, did indicate that their intent to have a specific tab on the NRC homepage, a special topic for Vermont Yankees decommissioning. So that will hopefully make locating upcoming information, new information, upcoming meetings regarding Vermont Yankees decommissioning a little more accessible. Now turning over to Department of Energy, I am still involved with the Department of Energy's National Transportation Stakeholders Forum, which is doing a fair amount of planning regarding the eventual shipments of spent nuclear fuel to a yet to be named repository. be it Yucca Mountain, be it one of the independent private facilities that are under proposal. But we continue to work on that. Our latest step, the Ad Hoc Rail Routing Working Group, did submit a draft update of the Safety Compliance Oversight Plan to the Federal Railroad Administration for its review. There will be some iteration in that process to work out the rules and regulations that are necessary for commercial spent nuclear fuel shipments when those begin. We also continue to work on the START routing tool. This is a tool that will eventually be made public, so people, local governments can get an idea of, well, what would a typical spent nuclear fuel shipping route look like?
Tony?
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're getting behind.
Yes, okay, I am actually almost done.
Okay. I want to make sure people have time to ask questions.
Yeah, okay. Also, the consent-based siting process is still ongoing for the moment with the Department of Energy. There is a public comment period open on the draft process. That is through April 14th. If you want more information on that, I just want to make certain on the right page here. Okay, yes, there is a website available for this. There it is, okay. There may be some change of direction. It depends what the Trump administration wishes to do. One other thing I would like to note, since this has been a topic here, the IRS did issue a draft change in federal tax code regarding the taxing of decommissioning trust funds. There's a public comment period open for that now through March 29th. If you look at the slide, you can find the actual filing at the website that is noted there. From what I can tell, and I am not a tax expert by any means, this does look as though it's clarifying the rules regarding the use of decommissioning trust funds for the purposes of spent nuclear fuel storage, as well as some things that may be able to help us when we get to site restoration standards. But I've asked a number of other people in state government who have a better idea of tax code than I do to look at this, so take that with a grain of salt. And as always, all information from these meetings is available on the NDCAP website, and that's how you find the NDCAP website. So with that, if there are any additional comments from any of the other agencies represented here, if there are any questions, we're open for that.
Okay, does anyone on the panel have any questions for either Tony or Joe? I see Mark does.
I have a question.
Yes, so Joe, I'm glad to hear you mention that you're going to do some revamps on the VY decommissioning site, and I would particularly like to ask that the document library, get some descriptions on things like LDPR-28-20160002 as a file name that's in the document library, but you can't tell what it is. Some descriptions or something would be good. My other question relates to the accelerated pace of the moving the spent fuel into the casks and onto the pads, which, if I'm doing my math right, is going to accomplish in less than 4 years, something that was originally going to take about 6 years. And I appreciate the handout, but it doesn't really say what makes that possible. It just says that there are a couple of amendments to a certificate of compliance that's going to allow Holtec to allow you to do this more efficiently. So what is it actually that's allowing this to happen so much faster?
I think the question is probably better suited for Holtec, and we can certainly make them available at a future meeting. But Essentially, the current certificate of compliance that is associated with the Holtec 100 system assumes a certain amount of time that the fuel has to remain in wet storage before it can be put into canisters. And so the current design, it's approximately 5 years. With the changes to their license, the certificate of compliance is the document. They are doing analysis and have submitted to the NRC demonstrating that the existing canister with no modifications can handle fuel that's been cooled less period of time. So in the case of Vermont Yankee, we shut down at the end of 2014. We expect to have fuel into dry storage by the third quarter of 18. That would be just a little less than 4 years. So this change to the license for these canisters would allow that to happen. So that's one of the changes to the Holtec canister license amendment they have with the NRC.
Okay, so it's not that you're sort of hurrying up and doing it faster, is that this change would allow you to do it sooner?
Correct. And this is not just a Vermont Yankee thing. By getting this approval, Holtec will be able to utilize these canisters for the similar fuel design for any licensee who wants to take advantage of that. So this is not just a Vermont Yankee change.
Okay, Joe, this is Jack Wall, the County Director of Vermont Yankee. If I could add to that. So what's going to allow Holtec to get NRC approval for the change to the C of C for the shorter time period? What allows that is the fact that they've got a new and improved design, and they're using a much improved metal that has about 10 times the heat transfer capability within the interior of the multi-purpose canisters. So that is what allows the change to the C of C, where we can load hotter fuel, if you will, that's been cooled for a shorter time period.
Okay, thank you. I just have a quick question for Joe, also, for Tony also. Can you explain what draft bases are? Is that actual sort of drafts of rules, or is it, what does that mean?
Okay, for some reason I can't tell if this is on over here. No, what this is, the first step was a collection of comments. So the draft bases will be, the NRC will examine all of the comments that they've received, and they will compile that into a scope of, based on the comments and their background, there will be some decisions made on what needs to be covered in the decommissioning rulemaking. So the draft bases the bases will be what's all going to be in the rules. So it's not the rules themselves, but it's the criteria that the rules will be based upon. So they're drafts simply because they're put together, they'll be open for public comment, and after there's some additional public comment, then the rules will be finalized. And once we have the finalized bases, then the actual rules will be written up.
Senator McDonald, do you have a question?
I may have been doing this for too long. But this, you said earlier that we're in a situation where the plant that was supposed to be cleaned up when it was done can't be cleaned up because there's not enough money. The last questioner said what was supposed to be done in 6 years is going to take 40, and now we're being told that something is going to be sped up. I don't know how you go from 6 to 40, and now we're talking about speeding it up to what, 39 or 38 or 36? We don't have enough money in this plant because the New Orleans owner has insulated themselves, and we can't get, they're not backing the plant up. And the deep pockets that the previous Commissioner of Public Service told us were deep pockets backing this plant up and making sure that it was operated in a manner that would be closed when we were told it was going to be closed. And today we don't have that. And you talked about you were making charitable donations.
These are from our employees. So the charitable contributions are from our employees.
Oh, and you represent
I work for Entergy, Vermont.
Joe's the government affairs person at Entergy.
Okay. So, it was going to be done in 6 years. This is the third time that this transfer of ownership is going to take place? That was mentioned earlier? Or has it happened 3 times already?
This would be the third.
This will be the third time. This is the third time the Department of Public Service Board is being asked to give a certificate of public good for the transfer of ownership of this facility. We'll go back to the last time the transfer was made. Vermonters were told the plant would be cleaned up when it was done, that we didn't have to worry because the new owners had deep pockets and pledged to stand behind the plant, and that the decommissioning fund was going to be adequate to cover the cleanup. A few years after the transfer of ownership, the last time, after several years, we were told, well, actually, they're not putting any money in the fund and it won't be adequate. A couple years later, we were told that it wasn't actually going to be cleaned up on schedule. Somebody asked how this could happen, that we could go this many years to learn that the transfer of ownership and how it was represented by the Commissioner of the Department of Public Service was wrong. And I want to talk about what you did to bureaucrats and machine guns at that point. Several years later, Commissioner O'Brien came in and told the Joint Energy Committee that the business about deep pockets, the ownership from New Orleans, there was no paper upon which it was written that it would hold water. And we've had testimony, Madam Chair, about normal dollars and accumulating interest and reasonable assurance and whatever. We're even being told that there's maybe a tax ruling on money that was taken from ratepayers and put into the decommissioning fund that is now being used for pretenses under which it was taken for different purposes. And we're being asked now to transfer the ownership once again. And there are a lot of good things that we're being told about transferring this ownership that are going to take place as a result. Sir, we have a lot of fantastic information. I know what you're talking about. I've been doing this for a while. But there's a pattern here. There's a pattern here. The Public Service Board, I'm going to stray off the reservation for a moment. Fairpoint sought a certificate of public good to take over the phone company, and that got approved, and we were going to get better service, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what we got was 3 bankruptcies because they paid too much, and the workers got squeezed and reduced, and they're outsourcing their work and paying the Vermont laborers less. I've been doing this for a while. When corporations come in and spend a lot of time talking and use a lot of fancy words and suggesting that they're donating money for such and such that they're not donating, it's their employees. The promises are broken over and over and over again. And this place was supposed to be cleaned up in 6 years the way other nuclear plants were when they closed down. And it's gone to 40 years, which 60 years, it's still going to be 60 or more. And we're being told that we're going to sell to an entity who's making promises, and it's going to speed things up. The witnesses, current owners, told the state of Vermont they would not expand and not extend the license if the state of Vermont said, no. They told us that as part of an agreement to allow them to do an upgrade in this plant. They told us they couldn't extend the license if the legislature didn't approve it. And the legislature didn't approve it. And several of the people who made that promise were replaced by others. And they went to court and they broke that commitment. And we are here, we got 15 of us in this row, and three more that are not here, spending the evening listening to a lot of words about finances and this and that, the next thing, by a company that no longer wishes to own the plant and is telling us the wonderful things that will happen if you're able to unload it to someone else. And I don't know why anybody on this panel and in this community would believe that the best interest of the state of Vermont and such a transfer is being presented, because almost nothing when there's been transfers of ownership and commitments made have come to pass. And I'll wrap up, Madam Chair, was, there's some Stockholm syndrome going on here. Vernon is held hostage with a relic that it was told it would never have. And they're being told how lucky they are that their people holding them hostage, that their employees are making charitable contributions. And the corporate owners down in New Orleans are hoping that this sale will make those corporate owners even more remote. And they'll never have to dirty themselves with this plan again. So, there's a lot of talk here, but I don't have a lot of faith in it. None of the guarantees that committees like this have been given, and chairs of the Public Service Board have told us are there, have materialized. It's always over the horizon. And I don't know why we should believe that this is a good idea and that the truth and the promises will be delivered in a way that to date have never been delivered. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I want to clarify one thing. I want to clarify one thing that I said. There would be 3 owners. This is the second license transfer, so it hasn't been 3 license transfers. And I don't want to get into a big back and forth discussion because we have a lot of things to do. But I think it's important to recognize that for 2 years, this panel has been meeting and trying to get public information out as much as possible. And some of the things you talk about are things that we've been addressing and we're going to try to address going forward. So I think all of us have a issue with something, and I think...
Madam Chair, I have to agree with you. The rear view mirrors from this automobile have been removed. We only look forward. We never look back. Because that's where the lessons are, and we never learn from them.
Yeah. Well, we can have a whole 3-hour meeting on debating all these issues. But I think what we're trying to do here now as a panel is there's a proposal to sell the plant. There's a CPG process, there's an NRC process, and as a panel, we want to keep on top of that and make sure that people on both sides have the opportunity for public comment, because I think it's important, no matter where you come down on this, that people get to make their comments known and that we get as much information, accurate information from all sides as we possibly can. So I think that's what we're going to try to do moving forward. At least that's what I want to do moving forward. So does anyone else on the panel have any questions or comments? Commissioner Tierney.
Good evening, Mr. Lynch. I thought I heard you say earlier that the January 24 meeting was a voluntary exercise and outreach by Entergy to the NRC. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was not a required public meeting, and we thought it was important to have it in advance of us submitting the license.
And I apologize for the croaking voice, but I seem to be losing it. My question to you is this: as you are probably aware, there's significant public interest in having a public hearing here in Vermont. And my question would be, given the company's success in invoking voluntary process before the RC, is the company inclined to join the Vermont Zones panel and asking for such a public hearing in Vermont?
I think because the public meeting is an NRC decision process, we would certainly support it and participate in it.
No, I'm not talking about you supporting the request for it from the NRC, because they don't have to grant that public meeting request.
I think Entergy's position, having public input is always the best way to do anything. So, you know, if it's felt by the public that it's very important to have a public meeting to talk about an updated PSDAR, we would support it.
And just to be clear, I'm talking about public meeting, Madam Chair, not public hearing. The distinction being that the other two, the public hearing and the hearing or technical hearing are both mentioned in the future. The public meeting is one where the public gets to speak. I want to be precise about this. I heard you say that the company would consider that if the public were interested in it, but specifically the panel. You heard Dr. Irwin earlier speaking of possibly sending a letter signed by the panelists, even our congressional delegation. Is that a letter that the company would join in?
We have 2 members on the panel, and I think they would join in with the NDCAP.
I'm not talking about the members, I'm talking about the company.
They're members of the company, so they represent us as well. Jack is the director, and I don't have the wholesale authority to say that the company supports it. I'm telling you.
I understand, Mr. Lynch, but you do have the ability to go to the officials, such as the president of the company, to ask for that permission, correct?
And I would absolutely do that.
Of course you would. Thank you.
Anyone else on the panel? Oh, David Andrews.
Yeah, I'd like to go on the record and just set something straight that was heard earlier about Entergy and the corporate donations and where they're coming from. As the person on the panel that represents the employees, present and former, I've not once heard, I suppose I should preface this by saying it's well known among the Entergy management that I'm not a spokesperson for the company, and oftentimes I'm at odds with them. It goes with the territory, but the employees of Entergy, and before that the employees of Vermont Yankee, have been very deeply vested in the community and have spent countless hours and have opened their wallets repeatedly to support the community. And I don't recall once hearing Entergy, when making donations that came from the employees, representing them as being dollars from the company. They've clearly made that known that those are dollars that have been contributed by the employees, oftentimes matched by the corporation. But I heard a characterization earlier that needed to be set straight. Entergy employees are proud of their community and proud of their contributions, and to hear the tone that I got there was there's not enough money in the till, and yet the company's making these contributions is inaccurate. And
Madam Chair?
It didn't sit well.
Yes.
If this company is making contributions, how do they have money to make contributions when they don't have money to clean up the plant?
So would you like the company to stop making contributions?
This is a company that said the plant would be cleaned up. The deal was a deal. Ownership's transferred. Now it's a 40-year cleanup. And that's what it is. And when you ask them, why can't it be cleaned up sooner, they say, we're a limited liability corporation. We don't have any money. New Orleans sealed it so we can't get to New Orleans. And then they're talking about having money to give away for corporate. And it's a picky, tiny, annoying question that I'm asking. But that shows, as a small example of the big thing that's happening. And that's what's happening. It's unfortunate. I applaud the employees for different contributions. Hallelujah, you're good people.
Does anyone else, Dr. Irwin?
Yeah, very specific questions. Joe, on your slide, on the second page about the construction office building, can you estimate the age of that building?
I don't know that. I don't know if Mike or Jack would know. I don't think it's an original structure. Usually we build these because there was something during the operation of the plant that
Steve was there when it was built, I'm sure.
Yes, I was, and it was built in 1985 in preparation for the installation of the new stainless steel piping for reactor reset.
Yeah, the reason I ask is about asbestos. We have concerns about that. Then, second, you mentioned the 2 NRC inspections. Are those inspection reports posted by the NRC for public viewing, to your knowledge?
Well, what I referenced in my presentation were 2 inspection procedures. Those are publicly available any day, and once the NRC exits from their 4th quarter inspection activities, they have, I think, 45 days to get out a report, and that's publicly available as well.
Okay, thank you. And then the last, maybe rhetorical, so the blast wall around the diesel generator, is there a reason that it's not all 4 sides and the top of it, as opposed to just the 3 sides that face the west, north, and south?
The picture was taken from inside the protected area of the plant, so we have security, that protects essentially that side. So it would be a vehicle or some sort of blast coming from our outer fences. So it was designed to accommodate something from the outside, with the assumption that our security 24/7 would be responsible for ensuring no vehicles got inside of the multiple barriers we have, including the security owner control area, the protected area, within our fences and our protection. So it's designed to accommodate something that would be in the outside fences that has enough force to potentially damage the security within.
Understood. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair, Steve Skibnowski here, representing the town of Vernon. I do want to comment on one item that Senator McDonald raised, which is that somehow Vernon has been put in a bad situation as a result of this extended decommissioning. Vernon residents certainly were well aware that there was going to be a timeline for decommissioning, that it varied and in fact was tailored to each site. Just because the site at Connecticut Yankee was decommissioned in 8 years doesn't mean that that was going to happen at Vermont Yankee. And I don't know of anyone in Vernon that was under any kind of illusion like that. I also will tell you categorically that the town of Vernon has benefited immensely from the plant, and although we certainly feel very sad that it's been closed and would like to have continued running for another 20 years, we will forge ahead and make do and support however we end up getting this place cleaned up and restored to function. Thank you.
Thank you. What I want to do is we're getting really behind, so I want to open it up to public, but I only want questions either for Joe or Tony. No comments right now, but we've had this big back and forth and we could do it all together. So unless you have just a question, we'll take comments at the end. Yep, and if you could say your name and your town, and if you could keep it questions short, it would help us so we can get more in and get moving. Thank you.
Guy Page, Vermont Energy Partnership. It's a question for you, Tony. Will you be putting on the website the link to that excellent new EPSB, the EPSB program that's on the Public Service Board, with which one can easily track docket 8880. And you have an account, you have to sign into it. I've got my account ready, and I've been following it on this new EPSB thing, and I just think it's great that PSB has made this available to everyone with a computer. I just wondered if there was a plan to put that on the...
Well, at this point, I'm not certain how we'll do it. It could simply be a direct link into the particular docket itself. I'm not the person who actually maintains the
We can
website.
just look into it.
Yeah, we can look into it.
Mr. Page, sorry, Mr. Page, Commissioner of the Department of Public Service, we'll make that happen.
Thank you. We're glad you're here.
Chris Williams from Hancock. This will only take about half an hour. I have two questions for Joe. One is the document you referenced that was in the panelist packets on the accelerated cask loading. Is that going to be available on your website, or do you have extra copies? There wasn't one on the table here.
It certainly is available on our website, and I don't know if we have extra copies, but you can have mine.
Great. Well, I think it'd be great to have those. Well, thank you. And then my second question is, I saw all of the full-page ads that were taken out in papers around the state, which was reminiscent of full-page ads taken out around the state years ago. How are those paid for? Were they paid for from the Decommissioning Trust?
I don't.
That's all I want to know.
Thank you very much for your question. I don't know the answer to that question. I know it's part of our outreach for, making information available to the public on the certificate of public good process, but I can follow up and let you know how that was paid for.
I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Leslie Sullivan, Sachs from Brattleboro. The casks are going, dry casks are going to be loaded in April. Does that mean the radioactive fuel rods will be transferred from the fuel pool in April? Or what exactly is the definition of loading casks in April?
So very similar to the 13 casks that are currently loaded, we would start the campaign of individually loading up to 27 additional casks. So starting in April, we'll be moving fuel from the spent fuel pool into the dry cask and then eventually onto the pad.
Okay, Peter, will that be the last question?
So this is very quick. This is Peter Manos from Brattleboro. My question to the gentleman from Entergy. Given all the time overrides and cost overrides that Areva has and other problems that you can find if you do a news search, I'm wondering, and I'm sure they're the best at what they do, but I'm wondering, was Bechtel and Westinghouse that have joined together to also do decommissioning, were these American companies considered?
I think any question specific to Areva should be answered by Areva, and they've made an offer to come to future NDCAP meetings to introduce themselves and answer questions like that. I do know that there were multiple parties involved in the interest of going forward with the transaction. They were all teams. I'm not sure if Bechtel and Westinghouse were those, but there were a number of entities that approached us on that.
We're going to move right on, Joe. Do you want to give your presentation? Joe's going to give us a little bit of a rundown because, as everyone knows, since the last meeting, Entergy and NorthStar filed their petition on their certificate of public good with the Public Service Board. And this is just going to be rundown on what it is, and if we need to take a deeper dive, we'll do that at another meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Hopefully we'll save a little time. So we just really wanted to go over the process by which we now have in front of us to go through the approvals, both from a federal and from a state level, on the transaction between the NorthStar Group and Entergy Vermont Yankee. So we talked a lot about the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We will be submitting a license transfer application in conjunction with NorthStar for the transfer of the license, and you heard from the NRC that process. And of course, the second very important part of the process is to go before the Public Service Board. That's the state agency that must approve the sale and the transfer of the certificate of public good that we currently hold to operate Vermont Yankee and to decommission it to NorthStar. You'll find in the testimony that supported the petition and the application before the Public Service Board that was submitted jointly by both Entergy and NorthStar, looking for the approval of this transaction. It included the testimony of 8 individuals who are either a party to the actual transaction or experts in their field that supported certain elements of ensuring that this is of the best interest in the state of Vermont. The testimony in summary provides NorthStar's schedule to complete decommissioning and site restoration earlier than the schedule that we had published as part of our PSDAR under the Safe Store rules with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. NorthStar's technical and financial qualifications to complete decommissioning and site restoration. So you heard from the NRC that the financial qualifications will be an important element. Certainly it will be an important element before the Public Service Board as well. NorthStar's commitment to be a fair partner to Vermont, which is one of the elements for achieving a certificate of public good. The economic and public policy benefits of earlier decommissioning and site restoration. So we'll talk about how is it a benefit to Windham County, to Vernon, to the area, so that this property can be turned around and reused sooner than it would have been under the scenario that we had developed as part of our PSDAR. And it also will propose the site restoration standards, and we've talked in this forum about those standards in the past. These would be both radiological and non-radiological cleanup standards that would be acceptable to the Public Service Board and applied to site restoration at the site. All of the information, all of the documents, and there are a lot of them, are available on vydecommissioning.com. It was also mentioned that you can sign up through the Public Service Board's website, and now it sounds like there's another avenue to sign up through Department of Public Service. So there's many ways that you can get to the testimony. All the exhibits, they're all public information right now, and they're all out there. And I actually tested it myself, and I'll be the first to agree that we can improve upon our website. It's exactly the reason why we're doing it. It does take a bit to get through it. We will put them in the right places under categories so they're a lot more obvious and accessible. A little bit about the schedule that we've put together. This has been presented to the NRC earlier this week as part of our public meeting, and this is the projected or targeted schedule that we have put together for the transaction. As mentioned, we have already filed before the Public Service Board the Certificate of Public Good petition that was done on December 16th. As far as the NRC path, we had the pre-submittal public meeting earlier this week, and it's our intention to file the actual license transfer application in the February timeframe. We don't have a specific date. We're going to take the comments that we received both from NRC and the public and ensure they're addressed as part of that application process. And then our target is to have an NRC decision. Again, this is a target. You work closely with the NRC. You don't know the type of questions that they're going to have, but our target is to have NRC approval by the end of 2017, and then to have a decision from the Public Service Board 3 months after that, the end of the first quarter of 2018. And then the activities at the plant that are also important elements to this transaction is the completion of the transfer of fuel from wet to dry, as I mentioned earlier. That's targeted to be complete by the end of the third quarter of 2018. If all of those come together as we have them planned and laid out, the transaction for the sale and the transfer of the license from Entergy to NorthStar would be complete by the end of 2018. That would thus allow NorthStar to then start the work associated with decommissioning. And the last slide is to really talk a little bit about the procedure and process involved in getting a certificate of public good with the Public Service Board. Please understand that we haven't even been before the board as yet. We did submit the joint petition and the supporting testimony. The next milestone is next week, February 1st. We have a scheduled pre-hearing conference. The purpose of that is to put before the board a proposed schedule that hopefully has been worked collaboratively between the joint petitioners and the various agencies that are going to be important in this decision process. So that will be presented on February 1st. A short time after that, I don't know the exact date because they haven't put out a scheduling order, we'll then know what the milestones are going forward for this entire process. They will include first motions to intervene, so those interveners would then identify themselves. There would be an opportunity to respond to those motions for intervention. That would likely occur, in the near term to make sure we understand all interested parties. Then we would go through a very long process of discovery and responses. There'll be multiple rounds of those. That's very typical for this type of proceeding. We would then, once we have that done, lead into technical hearings. Again, we don't have the dates yet, followed by the legal briefs, and then ultimately a decision by the Public Service Board, which again, we're targeting or hoping in our schedule for the end of first quarter 2018. We've worked with the chairperson on bringing back some of the technical experts at a meeting in the future. And if there's any questions that you might have on the testimony or on the scheduling order, probably the more appropriate time would be a future meeting, and we would be more than happy to accommodate that.
Great, thank you, Joe. And we're going to talk about that a little bit at the end of the meeting. I didn't want to, our new deputy commissioner and commissioner, I didn't want to jump on you folks right away and say we need your help. So we got to discuss the timing and everything, and then we can get more into the site restoration and things like that with Bill Irwin. I need to talk to you too. But we'll talk about that more in depth at the end of the meeting. But Joe has made offers to help us get the people that we need to get to tell us what they're going to do, but we can talk about that more. So thank you, Joe. And now we're going to have Geoff Commons, who, hopefully I'll get your title right, Public Advocate with the Vermont Department of Public Service, and he's going to go through with us the Certificate of Public Good process. The last time we heard this was like a year or so ago when they put the CPG in for the second ISFAC. So we need a primer, and we appreciate your coming down.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Geoff Commons, and my formal title is I'm Acting Director of Public Advocacy at the Public Service Department, and that position is often referred to as the Public Advocate, so you are correct. Mr. Lynch really covered the process pretty well. I'm happy to answer any questions about it. I'd like to talk for a minute about the actual substantive criteria that the Public Service Board will have in their minds as they are reviewing this petition. And as we, the department, present our case, these are the things that we will also be having in mind and the concerns that we'll have. The petition was filed asking for approvals under 3 different statutes. The standard of review, or the standard for approvals in those statutes, is that the proposal in front of the board can be approved, should be approved, if it promotes the general good, or promotes the general good of the state. That's just a little bit broad and amorphous, and probably depends a lot on the eye of the beholder. Over the years, the board has come up with more specific criteria that it uses. And I'll just run through those quickly. There are not too many. One is technical expertise of the applicant. Another is adequate service. Will they maintain the facilities that they're proposing to take ownership of? Are they financially stable? Do they have the ability to obtain financing in order to carry out the activities that they're proposing to carry out? What is their business reputation of the applicant? And, well, there's one more, and actually I skipped another one. There are a couple of criteria in here that relate to the relationship of a company with its customers. And the focus of those criteria are people in Vermont, usually ratepayers, and in this case we're dealing with what we call a merchant plant. There are no Vermont ratepayers on the hook for costs associated with this facility at this point. The board has emphasized that those criteria are not rigid. They are tailored to the specific petition and proposal that's in front of the board. So as I said, there are a couple of customer-focused criteria that simply would not be applicable here. But things like technical expertise, financial stability, adequate financial capacity, those criteria are likely to be front and center for the Public Service Department and the Public Service Board. And we will be doing extensive discovery, as Mr. Lynch referred to, and we will, in addition to in-house expertise, we can retain additional experts as needed in order to do a complete evaluation and make sure that we are completely confident that we understand the proposal, that we understand the implications, the ramifications of the proposal, and that if we are to lend our support, that it is in fact, in our best judgment, really in the general good of the state of Vermont. So that's the kind of the substance of what we'll be looking at. As Mr. Lynch said, the process in front of the board has not really yet begun. We will have that pre-hearing conference, and we will be discovering entities that would wish to intervene and so forth. One thing that we are advocating for, we are in discussions with Entergy's lawyers and so forth and others about the schedule, and I'd like people to know that we are advocating for there to be a public hearing as part of this process, and ideally some informational sessions as well, if those would be helpful. Can take any questions, and I'd be happy to hear from my commissioner.
I can just clarify again, because we've had a little bit of discussion this evening. When you refer to a public hearing, Geoff, you mean a public meeting where the public shows up and makes comments on the proceeding?
Thank you. I was speaking in Vermontese, not NRC language. When I say a public hearing, Ms. Tierney is absolutely correct. It's for the public to make comments. It is not a hearing in the sense of people being under oath and cross-examined. But it is important to the board, and I will say especially important to me as public advocate, that we do hear from people, that we do hear from the public. That is, to me, a critical component of the proceeding, and should occur relatively early in the proceeding so that we are informed of public sentiment and public concerns. Be happy to take any questions.
Are you taking questions, or do you want to get a break?
Well, if everybody, my plan was for us to have a break so we can walk around and then come back and ask any questions we have of Joe and Geoff, and then have a general discussion about how the panel wants to sort of proceed with the CBG. Do you want to do that, or do you want to keep going?
Whatever. Before I ask the question, I'll just.
Does everyone want to break and then we come back and discuss?
Yes.
Okay, there's been a vote. We'll come back. If Geoff can hang around, you're over here, perfect. So we'll come back in about maybe 5 minutes of 8. We'll take 10 minutes tops. Thank you, everybody. Okay, everybody, I'm sorry, Martin and I were talking. Thank you. We'll get back to the meeting. And where we left off was with Joe and Geoff had gone through the CPG process. And what I wanted to do is just take a couple of minutes with the panel to decide how we want to, first of all, if anybody has any questions for Joe and Geoff, and then have a conversation with what do we think we need, or what do we want to do as a panel with the Certificate of Public Good process. You know, do we want to weigh in? Do we want to have opportunities for the public to weigh in with us? How we want to go forward. So I guess first of all, does anyone on the panel have any questions that either Geoff or Joe can clarify about what the process is? Yeah.
Actually, let Jim go first, guys.
Yes, Jim, all the way down there.
So, Joe, I'm looking at your your presentation. And there's a, you know, the whole night has been filled with a lot of technical terms, and so there was one word in here that just kind of leapt out at me, and I'm kind of amused by it, but I really do want to know understand what it means. NorthStar's commitment to be a fair partner to Vermont. It sounds very subjective in this ocean of very technical stuff. So what does that mean?
I think if you look at and maybe Geoff can help me out, I think if you look at the criteria that you have to go through to demonstrate that you meet, you know, all of the requirements, one of the statements in there is under that category, and then there's a number of elements under that lead up to being, you know, declared. It's kind of, you know, the summary of what is all this of the public goods of the state of Vermont. One of the elements is being a fair partner. And under that, there are a number of criteria that I think we'd be more than happy to explain, you know, at a future meeting with one of the people that has provided testimony to that.
Yeah, Chris, sorry.
This is a question for Geoff. So NDCAP is, I don't know how unique it is, but so we're focused on the issues around decommissioning of a nuclear power station. And so now this is coming before the Public Service Board. To get positions or other, so we exist in an advisory capacity for state agencies, and that would include the Public Service Department. As public advocate, and I don't want to get into the weeds of the process, because I did that last time, but is there a way that if there are positions that NDCAP takes, that the public advocate can get that into the record before the board?
Yes, certainly the department would absolutely consider very carefully anything that this panel, you know, felt that we should consider, frankly. And if it passed a resolution or so forth, I think that would be a strong indication to us, and we would absolutely put that into our thinking. And you know, I don't see any reason why that could not become part of the record before the Public Service Board.
Can I just follow on that? I know you won't know things until February 1st, you know, what the timeline's going to be. But when we do know, maybe there's a way that we can understand what the timeline is, and when something is like, well, it's too late, the train has left the station. So maybe we can figure that. You can help us with that.
Certainly. The schedule would be posted on websites. The board will issue an order with the schedule, and we would be happy to circulate that to, you know, to the members of this panel or anyone else who would like to, you know, is interested.
And you can make sure that we understand what each deadline is.
Certainly. I can answer questions about it.
Just since I know the weeds a little. So I guess what she's asking, Geoff, too, I mean, would you be able to kind of tell us like by when for like you as public advocate, would you need, like if there are to be resolutions to be passed by this body, by when would you need them so we can work back from that so that you would have that information to then inform testimony by the Public Service Department?
Sure.
Just not that you would have to adopt the resolution of NDCAP, but to say, you know, this resolution has been, I don't know, however that would be. Sure. But anyway, if you could just at the minimum tell us like, by this point is when this information would be used however, and so work back from there so we know.
Sure. I can say a couple of things. One is that at any time, you know, a resolution or so forth could be given to the Public Service Board as a public comment. That said, the time for the department, and let me just be a cautious lawyer here for a second. I'm not going to commit to sponsoring something into evidence that I haven't seen. But with that caveat, before we file testimony, so you will see in the schedule that ultimately comes out a date for non-petitioners to file testimony, and that is when we would have the opportunity to attach a resolution or so forth to as an exhibit to one of our witnesses' pre-file testimony. We would certainly consider that.
Thank you. Suggestion for something for the panel to think about, and then also a question for Geoff. It looks like the scheduling order will probably be issued in February. We don't know, I guess, if there'll be a public hearing like there would be automatically under a 248 or something, but if there is, and if there's a public informational meeting, whatever the board's going to do on that, I would hope that we would try to participate and have at least questions or statements about what we think is important if we don't have recommendations yet. And so I hope we would be able to do that. And it'll be tight. It'll be a tight schedule for us to do that since we only meet Mondays. That said, the question I have is, I know in the past I've been at Public Service Board hearings down here where someone who was entitled to party status would come in and testify, and the board would quickly say, you'll have your time and all of our attention in the hearings. This is for the general public. Where would this panel fall in that judgment? Would we be considered okay, and should we be? And if we're moving from practical advice to legal advice, you can tell me and you'll stop, I know. But should we think about that as a comment in those public hearings?
If this panel became a party to the case, intervened and became a party, then I would expect that members of the panel, speaking as members of the panel, would draw that same response from the board at a public hearing and say, no, you're a party, you get your chance in the hearing room. I think that, you know, the people on this panel are from diverse entities and interests, and in those capacities, and as just as citizens, can certainly speak at a public hearing. But again, if the NDCAP is a party and members were speaking as members of NDCAP, I think that the board would probably say, you'll have your chance, we need to hear from other folks.
No, but what I meant was if we're not a party, which I don't imagine we would be, but we're not also just Joe Public walking in here with some kind of a formal panel, where would we fall on that spectrum is my question.
I would certainly expect you to be allowed to comment and that as members of this panel, as this panel, that would carry weight with the Public Service Board, and I would certainly welcome you to do that.
Thank you.
So Jim, Geoff just gave you good information. Something that jumps out at me while I hear the exchange is that at no time is the panel foreclosed from conveying its thoughts to the Public Service Board. We're really talking about how.
Right.
So even if you were not permitted to speak at the public hearing per se, for whatever reason, there's nothing to prevent this panel from providing written comment to the Public Service Board, which is valuable. The board members do read those things. And as for whether it goes into testimony or not, you know, if you're a party, obviously the testimony would be that which we decide it's going to be, as Geoff already pointed out. But there is margin within which the public advocate can relay public comment that the public advocate has heard. And that might be something to consider too. That doesn't necessarily mean the public advocate is adopting it, but the fact that the public advocate is relaying it can often be helpful to you.
So I have a question for Joe, and then a question follow-up for both Joe and Geoff. The question for you, Joe, is the slide on page 2 with the transaction approval time. There are the steps related to the movement of fuel, to complete the moving of spent fuel. Is all of that paid for by the line of credit? In reviewing the minutes of the last meeting, as well as other information I've seen, that seems to be a prerequisite or an element of the transaction with NorthStar, is that spent fuel transfer from wet storage to dry is a prerequisite of the transaction and that the line of credit is used for paying for that rather than the nuclear decommissioning trust fund. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
No, that's correct. We have a turnkey contract with Holtec, so that's one of the reasons why that has to be done as part of the transaction. And our intention is to use the $145 million line of credit. The estimate was $143 million for the transfer from wet to dry, and none of that has changed.
Okay, great. And then the question for the two of you, and if you could answer it simultaneously in harmony, is we heard the NRC say that previous transfers have taken place in a year and 3 months, and then we see here that Entergy and NorthStar are looking for accelerated schedules with the NRC and with the Public Service Board. And I know that the sale docket for Entergy purchase from Vermont Yankee Power years ago did not take as short as this is described here. Will extended timeframes to complete the CPG process in the Public Service Board and or extended timeframes for the NRC approval cause the NorthStar transaction to be withdrawn or offer to purchase to be withdrawn?
I guess the best way to answer is that all of these are targets, and recognizing any time you're dealing with either a state or a federal agency or government, these are really estimates. So I would like to believe we have some float built into that schedule. I don't know how much we could tolerate beyond, some of the dates that we've established, but I can certainly get that answer for you at a future meeting.
Thank you.
If I can just answer from my perspective, the proceeding needs to take as long as it needs to take to make sure that the public and the board are satisfied that they have good information and a solid basis for a decision. And if that means extending the schedule, we would move to extend the schedule. At this point, I do not have a specific reason to believe that the schedule is too short, but I would always be open to that in the interests of that goal that I stated.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Oh, Chris.
So I guess, so this isn't a question, so you guys can sit down. So I guess this is a comment. This is not for discussion tonight. I'm offering this as something for us to ponder for the next meeting. But one of the things that research shows and experience shows is that if you give a citizen organization, a citizen panel, its own independent experts to help that group understand information that's being presented and arrive at its own conclusions, it tends to be kind of help build trust in those decisions. It helps make sense of information that's kind of being volleyed from one party to another. And so what I'm suggesting is that the panel work up a proposal or work up a request for the Commissioner of Public Service to support retention of experts to assist NDCAP with its own independent assessment of information presented around questions that the panel has. And I'm not proposing at all here some kind of parallel process to like the CPG, to the Public Service Board's PCPP, Public Service Board CPG deliberations or the NRC deliberations, but rather there's going to be information that we'll want to know, like, hey, based on what NorthStar is saying and Entergy is saying and the Public Service Department about the financial wherewithal of the company, is what they're saying makes sense. And an expert could say, well, this is what NorthStar is saying, this is what the Public Service Department and its experts are saying, and based on this expert's experience, this is how I would interpret that. That'd be the kind of thing that NDCAP would get out of this. And under the statute, 18 VSA section 1700, that established NDCAP, it states that the Commissioner of Public Service shall hire experts, contract for services, and provide for materials and other reasonable and necessary expenses of the panel as the Commissioner may consider appropriate upon request from the panel from time to time. And then it goes on to say under 30, that the funding for that would come from monies collected under 30 VSA Section 22. So, again, we don't have to get into this tonight. I would just wanted to throw that out there for us to consider, because if you think about our prior experience, like under the ISTC docket, under the filing of the PSDAR, you know, it is reasonable to expect that the state may have a position, and it's reasonable to expect that NorthStar and Entergy will have a position. And it might just be helpful for us to have our own independent experts as opposed to relying on the parties to say, trust us, when we may have multiple parties saying trust us, but we have conflicting information. So the idea is we would, you know, put out a RFQ, and of course all the members of the panel would be able to participate in drafting that and reviewing the qualifications, so it's not just left to us lay people trying to figure out who would be qualified. But anyway, that's the idea, and I guess I would just suggest maybe that be on our February agenda.
Okay, is everybody okay? Well, and we're going to get to our next meeting dates in a minute, so we can talk about this more. If that makes sense, we'll just talk it out for next meeting. Okay, we'll talk about when our next meeting is, and we'll put this on the agenda. So does anybody? Oh, there's Joe. I'm sorry. Sorry, Joe.
If you would, I just wanted to follow up on Jim's earlier question about fair partner. While we were going through the discussion, I read through the 400 pages of the testimony quickly. And I found it in one of the testimony. I'll just provide it to you. It's in Section 8 of Scott State's testimony on that.
Does anyone in the public have any questions about the CPG process? Oh yeah, come up to the mic, because you won't be heard on TV if you're not at the mic.
Wouldn't want to have that. Okay, Leslie Sullivan-Sachs from Brattleboro. So we've been through CPGs for the Vermont Yankee a number of times before, and perhaps not everyone's followed that. But under past processes, the public has been able to submit written comments all along throughout the case, throughout the docket. And you could comment multiple times as things were revealed. And there was also a time when through Vermont Access TV, where there were hearings held all over the state on one evening with the Public Service Board. I don't know if that will happen again that way or not. But I think that someone said we'll try to get a public hearing as soon as possible. And I would caution that sometimes, and that sounds really great, but actually if not enough information has come out, then it's really hard to give feedback. So I wouldn't want to have it right away. That's all. Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Clay Turnbull, and I'm here with New England Coalition on Nuclear Pollution. This proposed sale has raised significant questions for us, significant interest. First, I want to thank you all for being involved with this panel. It's a great sacrifice. I know you hear that a lot, but I truly know that it is. As I look at the Facebook, thank you for being here. We had a board meeting yesterday and have decided to commit to an intervention in this docket. We've retained counsel. And our concerns really focus around how this land is thought of, how it's used, what we expect of it. In a nutshell, it's been worked hard for 40 some odd years. It's done its service. Our opinion is it's time to clean it up and let the place heal. Let nature do its course and detox what's left after an excellent decommissioning. The talk about reindustrialization, maybe if there were other nuclear sites that had been redeveloped with great industrialization on them, maybe that's a direction worth thinking about. But because spent fuel is going to be on site, as it is at every other commercial nuclear site, someday that will leave. But until it does, it's unrealistic to think you're going to do anything else with that land. So let's give the land a break and let it heal. I did want to make a comment about the term public hearing and public meeting has been used and confused. There's the state level in definitions and there's the federal, right? The Vermont Public Service Board can choose to have a public hearing anytime they want. You can ask for one, they can decide to give it to you. Usually they have one for significant dockets. Not a big ask there. With the NRC, a public hearing is how you get that is laid out very clearly in federal law. It's a legal procedure. It's very involved. Anything other than a public hearing with NRC in the past, NRC has said when their representatives spoke at a public meeting that the views and opinions expressed at that public meeting by an NRC employee were that employee's opinions or understanding at that point in time. That's very different than what a licensee or the NRC tells you in a public hearing where they're under oath and have some responsibility behind what they say. So federal, and I beg the media to get this clear. The media needs to understand public, because here's why. Because if at some point in the future someone asks for a public hearing with the NRC, the public needs to understand. The public can say, we already had, geez, didn't we already have a public hearing? We already had 2 of those, didn't we? No, those were public comment. Those were public meetings, not hearings. I hope that was clear.
Yeah, thanks.
I sometimes make simplest things very difficult. And for the record, NEC is adamantly opposed to rubbleization. Rubbleization is essentially one way of taking a bunch of contaminated material, crushing it up, spreading it out, and then you don't have, and that's a way to meet criteria for how dirty is a site. So rubbleization is we want the site clean. We definitely don't want to delay the proceeding, but we don't want to see NorthStar get a blank check from the Public Service Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Yes, Geoff.
Could I ask you a question, Glenn?
Sure.
So what about rubbleization with proven free release material from on-site? Would you have any objection to that, do you think? So if they had proven that it could be free released and left there on site as clean material, could it be used, in your opinion, for fill on site?
I'm not a scientist, and to me those terms are I'm not familiar with those terms. I'm looking at it, and there's folks at NEC that do understand that to a greater depth. My limited understanding of it is you've got all this radioactivity, and if you break it up and spread it out, now it's more dilute, but you still have the same amount of radioactivity.
No, I understand that. It's just, you could rubbleize, which is the physical action of breaking something down,
Yeah.
but with clean material first. If proven clean, then it would not be diluting it.
Okay, I hear, oh.
That's an important distinction in any of the
Revelation of
It's like hearing and meeting. So hopefully you folks will look at that too. If it can be proven that the material that is to be rubblized and used for fill could be free released, then as clean, yeah, I should use that term, I guess, but then there may not be any dilution that's occurring. It's actually clean material as if you were bringing it from off-site, clean material.
So
Yeah, can I interrupt you? This is a really fascinating discussion, but we're like going way off the reservation. No, I appreciate it. We'll have this discussion at another meeting, because it is a good one.
I was just, so, good.
Okay, Steve, yeah.
Am I getting the green light? Got the green light. Clay, just so I'm aware and that you're aware, the Vernon Planning Commission certainly has an interest in this site. And I would encourage, it sounded like your group has decided that they've got some plans for the site going on into the future. I don't know how many of your folks live in Vernon. Any of them?
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Well, do communicate with the Vernon Planning Commission. We actually have a planning commission in Vernon. I was on it once myself, and we'd, I guess, love to hear your input, the input of certainly people or residents of the town, and I think that hopefully you'll be interested in hearing the Vernon Planning Commission's input as well, because it is, after all, a part of Vernon first and Vermont second. Or maybe in reverse, I don't know, but it is a part of Vernon, all right.
There are some Native Americans that would say it isn't even yours.
I didn't say it was mine, I simply said it's currently located in the town of Vernon, and it would be a wise thing, I think, for your group, the New England Coalition, is that what it is?
New England Coalition and Nuclear Pollution.
Right, you said NDC earlier, so I assume you wouldn't mind the New England Coalition abbreviation. But you should check, you should talk with them, establish a dialogue. You might be surprised at what they're thinking of.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
You're quite welcome.
And just so everybody knows, that the Vernon Planning Commission wants to come and talk to us, so that's on the future agenda. Okay.
Has the Vernon Planning Commission actually said what they want?
No, that's a future, we're going to talk about that as a panel in the future with the Vernon Planning Commission.
Because they haven't said what they want, right? Yeah,
No.
that's
Right.
what we're waiting for.
Okay, are we all done on everybody CPG? Okay, we're going to move on to the next. We're not going to elect officers yet because Martin and I don't know if we want to be reelected. So while other people are thinking about if they want to run, we're going to have Kyle Landis Marinello, who is from the Attorney General's office. He's the Assistant Attorney General for the Environmental Protection Division. And as we all know, in addition to having a new governor, we have a new Attorney General, TJ Donovan. And Kyle is just going to talk really briefly tonight, and hopefully we're going to work it out so he can come and give us more of an update on what the Attorney General's office is doing in the world of nuclear power.
Sure, thank you, and thank you for giving me a few minutes just to talk a little about our office. So again, I'm Kyle Landis Marinello. I'm an Assistant Attorney General, and I've been working on Vermont Yankee issues for a number of years. We have a new Attorney General, TJ Donovan, as of a few weeks ago, and I want the panel and the public to know this is a high priority for the Attorney General, looking at a number of issues dealing with the decommissioning of the Vermont Yankee site. We're going to be working with the Public Service Department and with the Agency of Natural Resources and Health Department and other agencies, supporting them in their efforts looking into the decommissioning of Vermont Yankee. We'll be involved in reviewing the sale cases at the Public Service Board and at the NRC, and supporting the state agencies that are working on those matters. And our office is going to be looking at making sure this site is fully cleaned up in a way that protects public health and the environment, and that the expenses of that cleanup do not fall on Vermont taxpayers. There are a lot of other Vermont Yankee issues that will be playing a role, and I'm sure I think Tony mentioned the decommissioning rulemaking, and we helped with the multi-state effort on the original comments to that a year ago, and we expect we'll be helping with that as well. And mostly just wanted to introduce myself to folks and let everyone know we're available. Our office is available to the panel and to the public, and we welcome you to reach out to us with any questions or concerns, and we're happy to help any way we can.
Thank you, Kyle. You're going to come to every meeting?
As many as I can.
Thank you. And we will see if we can work it out and have Kyle come back and give us more in-depth. And I've been meaning to say this for the last 2.5 hours, and I apologize, but I wanted everyone to know that Haley Perro from Senator Sanders' office is here tonight. And Haley and her counterparts in Senator Leahy's office and Congressman Welch's office have been basically with us for the last 2 years, and we've really appreciated their help. And I think they appreciate hearing what we say and what everybody in the audience says. So I didn't want to make you drive here for nothing, Haley, so thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to the dreaded election of officers. So if anybody else wants to be one?
Could I raise
Oh, yeah.
question? Before we do that, I think it was Bill Irwin earlier who made the suggestion that we pass a resolution of some sort to actually go on record requesting a public meeting from the NRC to be held here. And it seems to me that it would be, hopefully that's not a controversial matter here, and it seems to me that it would be better to go on the record as soon as possible here while they're just sort of getting up to starting up the process down there, rather than at some point later on. So I'm just wondering if Bill would like to perhaps make that motion.
Yeah, I'd make a motion that the Vermont Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel provide a letter to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission formally requesting a public meeting about the potential sale of Vermont Yankee from Entergy to NorthStar, especially as related to changes in the post-shutdown decommissioning activities report and site-specific cost estimate.
I'm assuming you want to say local.
Yeah.
You want to say local, a meeting in Vermont.
I am open to that, friendly amendment to that. Thank you.
Second.
We've got it written down. Okay, in a nutshell, I'll repeat that, you can tell me if we got it right, that the panel sent a letter to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission officially requesting a public meeting in Vermont about the proposed sale of Entergy Nuclear Vermont Yankee to NorthStar Services Group. Do you want to say specifically or especially related to the filing of a new PSDAR? Does something like that sound good?
And site-specific cost estimate.
Oh.
And a friendly amendment to make that Southern Vermont?
Okay, especially related to the PSDAR and site-specific cost estimate.
That is correct.
Would anyone like to talk about that?
I don't know that we need to add it to the motion, but one of the things that we may want to just get a sense of the panel is maybe do we also offer that if it would fit within their rules, a procedure that perhaps NDCAP could be a sponsor or collaborate in the hosting of that meeting? It,
Yeah, I don't think it hurts to make that offer.
I guess I would ask what exactly you mean by that.
Trying to be diplomatic. Oftentimes, when the Nuclear Regulatory Commission here hosts its own meetings, it winds up being an assault on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I'm not sure how much information is actually exchanged to them. And I thought that if it was perhaps jointly held and that it might be a more productive session if it was viewed as also not only an event sponsored by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, but also the citizens panel that is trying to solicit information through that meeting so that it's just perhaps more productive.
I'm getting the impression there's a history that I am perhaps not familiar with. And given the late hour, this is not the time to educate me. So I understood you to be saying, Chris, that you were not trying to amend the resolution per se, but rather you're raising this point. So my proposal would be that we just act on the resolution and perhaps discuss this later.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Could someone in 2 or 3 sentences tell us what would take place at this hearing?
It's actually be a public meeting, and they had one here, how long ago was it? 2 years ago? Yeah, 2014, when the first PSDAR was filed. Am I correct with that? And the NRC came up. It was actually up at the Quality Inn in Brattleboro, and it was like below zero in the room. We can all remember that. And the NRC took comments from the public about the PSDAR. So, and it was a long meeting, and they sat there and listened to every single person, provide comment. Excuse me. So basically, that's what it is. It's a public. It's the public's opportunity to come and tell the NRC what they think about the post-shutdown decommissioning activities report. Does that make sense?
And as a result of this, what might we expect to have happen?
I wish I could predict the future. David wants to make.
As a result of such a meeting, what might we expect to have happen as a result of such a meeting?
I think what we'd expect to have happen is to allow the public to have a local opportunity to communicate their thoughts and concerns directly to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
Yeah, and I think that's important that they hear that. And I think it's important that as I can speak as one member of this panel, as a citizen member of this panel, that I felt this from day one, that the public needs to be listened to, and the public needs to have the opportunity to say what we want to say. Obviously, we want to say it respectfully of each other, but to not make a request to have them come here, I think that we're not doing our due diligence as the panel that we are. We can all debate on, well, do we get anything out of it, and do they listen to us? I would rather err on the side of having them come up here and actually hearing and meeting us and seeing us. So, and they did. They sat there and listened. We were all cold for like 3 hours, but it was.
It was actually a good hearing. It
was a good hearing, and I think we all learned a lot about that. So, but I'll get off my soapbox.
Oh, if you get off it, I'll get on it. I think there's an awful lot to be said for men and women of this country having an opportunity to speak in their own voices to an authority about something they care very deeply about. That's item one of what you get out of this. This is an opportunity for people to stand in front of government officials who work for them and to express to their faces what they think and feel about this particular proposal. And I am delighted that this panel is inclined to throw its weight behind that kind of request, and I sincerely hope Mr. Lynch will do everything he can to persuade Entergy to back that request in full.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I work for you.
Bill?
Yeah, I would just say I've had the pleasure of doing a lot of nuclear stuff across the country, that Vermont has done great things relative to the public's good with nuclear power. The Tritium leaks of 2010, NRC came here and addressed a lot of the issues that we had, and they corrected a lot of perceptions that they had in their institution and have improved things. The decommissioning advance notice for public rulemaking, Vermont was in the lead of numerous states that sent comments of very pointed perspectives to the NRC that are making a very significant difference in that rulemaking bases as they come out. And I think that this is another opportunity for the little engine that could to really get something done with regard to this future of decommissioning in the United States.
Okay, I'm going to read Bill's motion. I think I got it written down correctly. So Bill Irwin is moving that the NDCAP provide a letter to the NRC to formally request a public meeting in Southern Vermont in regards to the proposed sale of Entergy Nuclear Vermont Yankee to NorthStar Services Group, especially related to the PSDAR, which I'll word out there, and site-specific cost estimate. Does that sound what we want?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, the big question we always have is, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, whether we just take a voice vote on this, or does everybody want their name on it? You know how we do the no and yes thing that we've been doing? I don't know.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question first about the motion?
Yes.
Chris brought up the issue of inviting co-sponsorship, and I think I heard that that would be conveyed along with the motion as part of the letter. I just want to emphasize that there have been so many times in the past, that last hearing everyone's referring to was productive, but there have been so many more that were absolutely confrontational from the get-go for no good reason. And if we can help avoid that, I think that could be the biggest service we provide. So I really hope that's part of it.
Yeah, and I think we can have those conversations, and I know, you know, Joe and I have sort of had that discussion, and there's been discussions about how can we work together so that we can all be productive. So I think that's a discussion that we can have with the NRC. I mean, they want it to work and we want it to work, so. All right, so for the people that are new to our panel, we have, when we do an advisory opinion, which this is, I don't know if we're not really calling it an advisory opinion, it's a motion. Sometimes what we do is we all go down and say yes or no, and then people's names are listed under a yes or under a no column. This is to send a letter. The question is, do we want everybody's name on the letter, or do you want to instruct the chair to send a letter to the NRC? I mean, I don't know how if we can do that by a voice vote, to instruct the chair to send a letter to the NRC. I mean, I don't know what people feel about that. It's probably easier, but does that sound good to everybody? We'll just vote yes and no, and okay. Now someone needs to second the motion.
Could I just make one point before we go any further?
I had seconded it.
Okay, sorry.
You're good? Should I make a point or no?
Yes, please make a point.
I think with letters like this, the symbolism is very important, and the members of the panel have very different capacities in which they're here. So this is the kind of occasion where listing the names and identifying what they do packs a punch in a way that a single person's name on behalf of an anonymous group does not.
Perfect. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. So we'll go right down the line, I think, and send, so we can all say that we want to sign on the letter. So does everybody clear with what the motion is? We're going to send a letter. Senator McDonald, do you want to start? We're saying whether or not we're for the motion, and your name will be included on it to send a letter to the NRC. Does that make sense?
The question is, shall I vote in favor of sending such a letter?
Yes.
The answer is yes.
Perfect. Okay, Steve, we'll go right down the line.
This is Steve Skibnowski.
Steve Skibnowski, yes.
Derek Jordan, yes.
William Irwin, yes.
Jim Mento, yes.
Chris Campany, yes.
David Andrews, yes.
Martin Langeveld, yes.
Kate O'Connor, yes.
Katie Buckley, yes.
June Tierney, yes.
Peter Walk, yes.
Jack Boyle, I abstain.
Mike McKinney, abstain.
Great, thank you. What I'm going to do...
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim, I keep forgetting you.
There. It's nothing personal.
Jim Talkovich, yes.
Is David Dean still on the line?
He had to drop off.
Okay.
I didn't forget
Anybody else, did I?
Okay, sorry, everybody.
What we'll do is I'll draft a letter up and just shoot it around to everybody based on what we said, so everybody can see what it looks like. And if anybody sees a typo or anything, you can let me know. Does that sound good?
Okay.
Now, we need to elect officers, so I don't know if somebody wants to make a motion. Oh, my God.
How many officers, is it chair and vice chair, is that it?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
So I would nominate Kate O'Connor as chair and Martin Langeveld as vice chair.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you, everybody. So exciting. Now we're going to talk about the annual report. And I just want to make two little comments to it. It's still a couple of places, it's still a work in progress. What I'm hoping that you will allow me to do is that we can approve it subject to just some minor editing. And the first piece of editing, and I passed out a piece of paper in front of you about the Nuclear Decommissioning Trust Fund. I'm still working on getting some of the correct figures, and I don't want to pass in a report that has wrong information. And that appears on page 12. The document I put on everybody's seat, which I now can't find my own, here it is. The questions that are just remaining, and again, I want to make sure it's right, is I have a note in there that talks about the decommissioning costs cited by Entergy, which was $1.24 billion, what the completion date was on that. And then I have the note about what NorthStar is estimating, what their costs were, and what the completion date is. And I just want to make sure we have those numbers correctly before we put something in a report to Entergy, the legislature. Does that make sense to what I'm saying to people? Yes. So that's sort of one thing, is one of the minor edits. George Desch actually gave me two other very minor edits, which would be to include the information on the report, the site restoration report, and what Chris Recchia said at the December 1st meeting, which I aired and did not put in. And then there was another reference that he also mentioned. So these were just really, really small edits. They don't change the what's in the piece. I'm not going to editorialize or anything like that. So those are two separate kinds of edits that are hanging out there. And I don't know if anybody else on the panel has anything that they want to add. And, oh yeah, tell me.
Yeah, actually, I have two minor edits as well. On page 4, line 8, there is a note that there was not a BCTV recording of the January 28th, 2016 meeting, I would like to add that there is an audio recording available. So we, that note could be added. Also, in one of my reports, or representation of one of my reports, on page 5, line 22, it's currently stated that DOE officials were on site. What was actually reported in that particular presentation was that DOE officials would be on site in the first week of May.
Bill.
You had another question in your write-up on page 10, line 14, the major milestones. March 28, 2016 inspection of decommissioning activities. That was by the Agency of Natural Resources.
Oh, the who?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, forgot that you had that. That was A&R?
Yeah, it was A&R, VDH, and Public Service Department.
Thank you. And just so everyone knows, we're going to make this look pretty, so it'll look nice when we pass it out. And the plan is, if we approve this tonight, which I'm hoping we will, February 8th, everybody can look at their calendars, if you want to go, February 8th at 11 o'clock, David Dean, who is the chair of the Natural Resources and Fish and Wildlife Committee, is going to have us present the report to his committee. As everybody, we'll get into this, but there's been a split. The committee has been split now. So we can go and see him, his committee. Again, it's February 8th at 11. We did it last year, and it was really great. The committee asked us a lot of questions, and David, like he did last year, has invited people from the House Appropriations Committee as well as Government Operations Committee, and they came last year too. So there's interest in the legislature. So people don't have to let me know now if you can come, and I'll send that date out again so you can remember. But does anyone like to make a motion to approve? Oh, Martin. Yeah.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve the annual report as drafted and as corrected tonight, and with Kate having leeway to make the final corrections that she mentioned, and also to make it pretty.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor of adopting our annual report?
I just have one question before we go there to discussion.
Yes,
Clearly, the report was drafted well before my appointment to this committee, so it would be important to me for the committee members to understand that if I were to abstain from the vote, it would be for that reason.
Yes, we. Please proceed. Yes. Okay, all those in favor? Adopting our 2016 annual report to the legislature as Martin just moved.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any people abstaining?
June Tierney.
Okay, thank you.
Kate,
Oh, yeah,
did you draft this?
I did. So I apologize for typos and.
Just, I would say, bless your heart. And again, I mean, this goes back to, again, our resource question, but bless your heart and thank you for doing this on behalf of the family.
You're welcome, thank you. It was so fun. I get to relive the entire year.
Contain yourself.
Now we're going to approve the minutes. We actually have minutes for the December 1st, 2016 meeting. If anyone looks at them and has any comments and questions.
I would, on page 7, line 14, where it says question from Chris Campany, I got into the weeds and it'd be really hard to reflect what I was talking about in a minute, so I would just like to simplify that if that's okay.
Okay.
So I would just strike what's there, say question from Chris, I would just say Chris Campany asked about the nature of the filing before the Public Service Board, and just leave it at that.
All right. Okay, we can make that change. Anyone else? Oh, Bill?
Yes, on page 2, line 34, I think it would be appropriate to say that Vermont has statutory rights for disposal of waste at waste control specialists in Texas.
Okay.
Just to clarify that.
Yep. Does anyone else have any corrections or?
Sorry, I have one more on page 6, line 28. Ed's last name is Anthes, A-N-T-H-E-S.
Thank you. No more corrections? Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes of the December 1st, 2016 meeting?
I move that we approve the minutes of December 1, 2016 meeting.
Right. Would anyone like to second that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone abstaining?
Joe Tierney.
Okay, we got 3 people abstaining. Perfect, thank you. Now, we have a proposal that I will say that I brought forward to change the composition of the panel. It's in state statute what our composition of the panel is. I don't know if we have everybody has it in their packets.
Is this the one where you kick me off?
Yeah, we kick you off. No, you get a life sentence, so you can feel forever. We don't have it in our packets.
It was in an email.
The annual report.
Oh, it's in the annual report, we can look at that, and Marty's got it up there too. Yeah, if you look at page, what is it? It's page 2 in the annual report. And I hesitate to look at the annual report because it has people's names associated with it, so don't look at the names, look at the titles. You know, we're doing it that way. What I am proposing, because according to state statute, 1 member of the panel has to be from the House Committee on Natural Resources and Energy. There's no longer such a committee. That committee has been divided into 2 by the legislature. So we need to address that issue at the very least. What I would like to propose, because this issue with the decommissioning and the sale because of the sale, the issue has become more relevant, and it is happening sooner. And one of the things that I have discovered is that we really need to get the Windham County legislative delegation engaged in the process a little bit more than they are. So what I would like to do, and I'm going to look down at Senator McDonald and say this is nothing personal to anybody, that we change it so that instead of having a member from the House Committee on Natural Resources and the Senate Committee on Natural Resources, we change it so that there is a state senator from Windham County appointed by the President Pro Tem, a state legislator from Windham County appointed by the Speaker, and that the state representative from Vernon would be an automatic member of that panel. To date, the member from the House Committee on Natural Resources and Energy was Mike Hebert, and he happened to be the state rep from Vernon. So I don't know how people feel about that. I don't know if I've explained it in a way that makes sense. And again, it's nothing personal. It's that I think we need Windham County legislators involved and Windham County legislators who are able to convey to their colleagues, what's important to us in this transaction moving forward. So it's just my suggestion. And we have an opportunity now, the legislative session has just started, and we do have to deal with that one issue. So I came up with this brainstorm, whether it's a good one or people can weigh in.
So just a question to get clarity here. We're talking about the fact that the House and Senate committees on natural resources and energy no longer exist.
The Senate one does. It's just the House.
Okay. But that am I hearing you correctly that we're actually increasing the size of the committee by one?
Yeah, that would be under what I propose, it would go from 19 to 20.
And the mechanics, if I presume the first step here is that this committee discuss this and if come to consensus with this, then this gets presented up to Montpelier. And the 18 VSA Chapter 34 would change to reflect those, the new makeup. And in the meantime, we would stay status quo based on the existing lineup?
That is correct. And Representative David Dean and Representative Mike Hebert have offered, if this is what the panel wants, they will jointly co-sponsor and introduce the legislation. But that's, they will do what they can do to be helpful to us. And I just want to clarify a couple of things about the panel composition is just while we're at this. At this point, the citizen members, there's been some question about what is our terms. There are 3 of us that our terms are up in August of 2017. One representative from the Speaker, one appointee from the President Pro Tem, and one appointee from the Governor are up in August 2017. The other 3 of us are up in August 2018. We can be reappointed. That's a conversation we'll have, when that time comes. So other than that, and we have the new members of Governor Scott's administration, the real change that we're dealing with right now with the state statute is figuring out how we want to handle at least one thing that we do have to figure out. But we don't have to make this decision tonight. If people want to think about it, it's nothing. We can do it however anyone on the panel would like.
Again, I'm just concerned that if we delay making a decision on this until February, it just seems from what I recall, the longer we get into the year, the worse the time schedule gets up under the dome to get anything done. And that if we can get past this, make a decision on this tonight, then we can get the lead on having this happen. Otherwise, we may be in this situation where this doesn't pass at all, and then we're into this for another year. So I'd suggest that we discuss and make a motion on this for tonight.
I'll second that motion if that's a motion.
It was a motion to think about it.
I have a question for the panel. The purpose of the change is to make sure that the Wyndham delegation is more involved. Should I understand that efforts to involve the Wyndham delegation, in addition to the folks who are already on the panel, have not been successful?
No. I think what it's been is there's been, well, we have until 2050. We don't have to worry about this right now. It's in Safe Store. I have had conversations with members of our delegation who are interested in being on the panel if we were to ask them to be. So I don't want to say anything negative about our Wyndham County legislators. But I think it's my sense that, people who live here sort of understand what we're talking about. And that's not to say people who don't live here, anybody who doesn't live here, I don't mean that, you know what I mean? But when you're talking about public participation and being able to hear on a daily basis what the public is thinking. But that doesn't say they have to live here and be on the panel to be effective. You know what I mean? I'm not denigrating anybody.
No, I don't get the sense that you are either. I think what's coming across to me, if the chair is speaking for other members of the panel, is that you want to make sure that there is representation on the panel from the folks who are duly elected by the people who live here. And given the site-specific and geographic definition of what we're dealing with, that makes perfect sense to me.
Just let me know if I botched this.
I also agree with the assessment that we need to act soon.
So I'll make a motion to, that we request a change of the membership, to remove the member from the House Committee on Natural Resources and Energy and the member from the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Energy, and replace them with one Windham County State Representative, member of the House, and one Windham County Senator, and in addition to add the state representative from Vernon.
Second?
Question, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Refresh my memory and could the members of the panel tell us who they represent and where they live?
Sure, so we can go back and
I'm at large, one of the citizens' appointees, and I live up in Wilder, Winter County.
Who do you represent?
Jim is a citizen member and he lives in Wilder.
And you,
Yeah, he's appointed.
and you represent this, and you represent?
Citizens.
Yeah, I don't represent anybody except everybody. I'm at large.
Entergy, I live in Vernon.
Entergy, Vermont Yankee, I live in Spofford, New Hampshire.
Agency of Natural Resources, I live in Montpelier.
Public Service Department, I live right down the road from you in Randolph Center.
Agency of Commerce and Community Development, I live in Guilford.
I was a citizen appointee and I live in Brattleboro.
I'm a citizen appointee and I live in Vernon.
I represent the past and present workers of Vermont Yankee, and I live 3 miles away from the plant in Vernon.
I represent the Wyndham Regional Commission, which is the regional planning commission for the 27 towns of southeastern Vermont, including the town of Vernon, and I live in the Big Fame.
I'm a citizen member appointed by the Senate President Pro Tem, and I live in Westminster.
And who do you represent?
I'm a citizen member representing whoever chooses to not ask me to leave, and I was appointed by the Senate President Pro Tem, and I live in Westminster. Is in Wyndham County.
I represent the Agency of Human Services, and I live in Bakersfield in Franklin County.
I'm a citizen appointee and I live in Dummerston, Wyndham County.
Steve Skibniowski, I live in the town of Vernon, represent the town of Vernon, and appointed by the Vernon Select Board.
I represent the Vermont Senate and I live in Orange County.
Does anyone else on the panel have any?
Okay, before we vote here, I would just say that from my perspective as a representative of the executive branch, I will choose to abstain from this vote for the separation of powers issue, but feel free to. I support the effort nonetheless.
Thank you. Thank you. And we appreciate sometimes that the state and Entergy are in positions where they have to abstain, so we don't look harshly on you, so don't worry.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments? And David made a motion. And Chris seconded. And the motion, as I understand it, is to remove the member to, we have to ask the legislature, to ask the Vermont legislature to remove the member of the House from the Natural Resources and Energy Committee and remove the member from the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Energy and replace them with one member of the Windham County Senate delegation appointed by the President Pro Tem, one member of the Windham County, one legislator from Windham County appointed by the Speaker of the House, and the state representative from Vernon. Does that make sense? Okay, all those in favor? You want a roll call?
Jim Tonkovich, yes.
Mike McKinney, yes.
Jack Boyle, yes.
Peter Walk, abstain.
June Tierney, abstain.
Katie Buckley, abstain.
Kate O'Connor, yes.
Martin Langeveld, yes.
David Andrews, yes.
Chris Campbell, yes.
Jim Methel, yes.
Bill Irwin, abstain.
Derek Jordan, yes.
Steve Skibney.
Steve Skibniowski, yes.
Mark McDonald, abstain.
All right, thank you. And, you know, we don't know where this is going to go in the legislature, so we may have a change, we may not. But I will let you know, we'll let you know when I hear back from David Dean and God, it's so late, Mike Heber. We want to have a brief conversation, but I don't even know if we need to have this conversation based on what Chris Campney proposed, the financial needs of the panel, whether we want to, because that's what you were asking, weren't you, Chris?
Well, more about it is more about providing us with experts, retaining experts to advise us on information for this.
Okay. One of the things, and I had a brief discussion with Commissioner Tierney about this, and you know, we really had a brief discussion, so I don't know what we want to talk about this tonight, but I explained to her that the Public Service Department has been providing us with the resources to hire somebody to do the minutes for us, which we've much appreciated. And we go around with these conversations, what kind of financial resources do we need? And I don't think at this particular moment we have a document that we could hand and say, this is what we need more. So I don't know if that's, and it's, you know, 9:15, and I don't think we all want to produce a document now. So I don't know if we want, we had a resources committee. Yeah, we had a resources committee which was made up of Chris Campney, myself, and Chris Recchia. It was a big committee. So maybe that's what we can have that conversation and, you know, not talk about it tonight and see what we can do. The one thing I do want to talk about is this quickly is the schedule moving forward. And I have my thoughts, but I want to make sure other people don't have their own thoughts. I am at this particular moment questioning whether we should do a meeting in February, and I'll tell you why. We have two parallel things going on right now. It's the NRC process with the license transfer application, as well as the certificate of public good that's going to be going through the Public Service Board. Right now, as we all know, because we had the presentation, February 1st is when we'll get an idea of what the schedule is going through the CPG process. When we find out what the NRC process is going to depend on when the license transfer application is filed with the NRC. So I'm not sure at this point whether it's time worthy for us at this point to have a meeting in February, or do we wait until March when we're going to know more about the CPG process, more about the NRC process, and we can have, and again, I haven't had a chance to talk to either June or Peter about this, you know, when will the state be ready to come and talk to us about what they think about the CPG, what they think about the NRC application. And I have had conversations with Joe Lynch about whether, you know, NorthStar comes back and talks to us. They've offered to help us get Holtec to come up, Ariva to come up, WCS to come up, Burns and McDonald to come up. So there's a lot of things for us to hear. I just want to make sure we're not having a meeting just to have a meeting, and that when we have a meeting, it's substantive and talks about the things we want. So I don't know how people feel about that, and not doing a February meeting, but instead doing a March meeting, which does not preclude us to doing, and I don't want anyone to panic right now, that does not preclude us to doing a meeting in April, May, or June. You know, we might find we need to skip February, but we need to do March, April, May, and June. You know, I'm not proposing anything to eradicate any other meetings. So I don't know what people's thoughts are on that. And if you think there is a reason to meet in February, just, you know, please say so.
I would agree that holding off on the February meeting unless something urgent comes up makes sense, especially we've been pushing luck here with our weather.
I think we also have seen from this evening's discussion that there have been a lot of questions that none of us have answers to at this point because we simply don't have information. And I think the longer, if we can give ourselves time to actually get smart if that information is available. So I agree with you that not having a February meeting makes sense.
Does anybody feel differently or think of, you know, we do, and I think by February we'll probably know about the advance notice of proposed rulemaking, or, you know, by March there will be more for us to really dig into. Does everybody feel okay with that? Let me get the date. It would be, yes, March 23rd would be our next meeting. And I think what I'll make sure I do is working with the people from the state and working with, you know, Joe at Entergy. If there's anything, I've tried to do this, if there's anything newsworthy or noteworthy that people need to know between now and the March meeting, we'll make sure we get that information out to you so you're not blindsided. We're all kept up to speed on when things happen. And, you know, obviously if something really exciting and we all want to get together happens, we have that ability to do so. So does everybody feel good? March 23rd, 2017, next meeting? Perfect. That good? David Andrews has something.
And I promise to be brief. Seems like at this time of the meetings, I usually start thinking of that YouTube video of the cowboys herding cats. And I think we glossed over it, but I think we all should give Kate a round of applause for the efforts that she takes throughout the year here, because it is herding cats. And you can tell when it gets this time of the evening in the meeting and her voice is starting to go. She puts in a tremendous effort, not just at the meetings, but outside of the meetings. I don't know how many people really realize the hours that she puts in. But, I think she should be recognized for it. So thank you, Kate.
That's not going to want me to do it in 2018, David. Yeah, and I just want to say there are a lot of people that do, you know, we put an agenda together, and the state is very helpful, and Entergy is very helpful, and members of the public are very helpful, and we've got Haley and the congressional delegation have been very helpful. So I think we're actually very lucky. And the panel, the participation, people have been coming for 2 years and they still come, so it's really great. Does anyone in the public have any final comments that they'd like to make? Thank you. Oh, Clay.
Clay Turnbull with New England Coalition on Nuclear Pollution. The key thing I left out earlier is we would like the site to be as clean, at a minimum, as clean as the 3 other New England decommissioned nuclear sites. Thanks.
Does anyone on the panel have any last comments? I just want to assure that our new people that we never go past 9. So I don't know if you've rubbed off on us in the back.
It's a special gift.
It's a special gift. So thank you, everybody, and you'll probably hear from me before March, but we'll see you then. Motion to adjourn.
I'm so excited, okay.
Everybody in favor?
Aye.